Okay, let's dive in. We've got this stack of material here on a pretty major event, WWE's Money in the Bank from June 7th, 2025.
Yeah, always a big one on the calendar.
Absolutely. So our mission today really is to unpack all this info, pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising facts, and just get a solid handle on what went down at this show.
Sounds good.
And there's definitely some interesting stuff to unpack here.
Oh, for sure. We'll be looking at, like, the unique location this year, those super high-stakes ladder matches, of course.
Some big title changes, some returns you maybe didn't see coming.
Yeah. And a main event that had some pretty major implications, maybe even for a legend's career path. Lots to get into.
Okay, let's dive in. First things first. Context is key, right? We need to understand where Money in the Bank sits in the whole WWE structure.
Absolutely. This isn't just some random show. It's consistently ranked as one of their absolute biggest events of the year.
Yeah, it's up there in the Big Five alongside WrestleMania, the Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. It's a major, major deal.
And a big part of that prestige comes down to the core concept, the thing that gives the show its name. Those Money in the Bank ladder matches.
Right. Explain that a bit for anyone maybe less familiar.
Sure. So you have these multi-person ladder matches, one for the men, one for the women. Lots of wrestlers in the ring, ladders everywhere, used as weapons, used to climb.
Chaos, basically.
Total chaos.
Yeah.
And the goal is to climb up and grab this briefcase hanging above the ring.
And inside that briefcase, it's not a title belt itself, right? It's something else.
Exactly. It's a contract. A guaranteed shot at a championship, any championship on their brand, whenever they want, wherever they want, for the next full year.
That cash-in potential is huge, isn't it? It creates this constant threat.
It really does. The champion never knows when the briefcase holder might show up. It keeps storylines interesting long after the Money in the Bank event itself is over. It's a brilliant device, really.
So, looking at this specific 2025 event, Saturday, June 7th.
Yep. It was the first time since 2018 that Money in the Bank was held in June. Usually it's been in May or July more recently.
Huh, a slight calendar shift. And the location, that was a big first, according to the source.
Massive first. It was held at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California.
Which is in the Los Angeles area.
Exactly. And you can't really talk about the Intuit Dome without mentioning, well, its recent significance for WWE, can you?
You mean the Netflix connection?
Exactly. This was the same place they held the very first Monday Night Raw broadcast on Netflix earlier in the year. So it already feels kind of historic in this new era.
Yeah, holding Money in the Bank there felt intentional, like cementing its place.
It really did. A statement, maybe? And the source makes a point of saying this was the first ever Money in the Bank held in California, period. And the first in the LA metro area.
That's pretty significant. Now, attendance figures. We got a couple of numbers floating around.
What did the sources say?
Well, the official announced number, Michael Cole said it on air, was 17,374.
Okay.
But then WrestleTix, they track this stuff super closely. They had it slightly lower, 17,069.
Right. Pretty close, really, within a few hundred. Often happens they announced it as sold out, which is standard.
Yeah, standard procedure.
You need that energy for a show like this, and it sounds like they had it.
Now, the wrestlers involved, typically Raw and SmackDown guys and girls, right?
Primarily, yes. That's standard for these big cross-brand events. But this year, the source points out something unique.
Oh, yeah.
There was a wrestler included from Lucha Libre AAA Worldwide. That's WWE's sister promotion down in Mexico.
Okay. So a bit of cross-promotion going on.
Exactly. And it wasn't totally out of the blue either. The source provides some context here. This Money in the Bank was part of a whole weekend of events.
Right. I saw that. There was another show earlier the same day.
Yep. At the Kia Forum nearby, WWE's developmental brand, NXT, had their Worlds Collide event. And that show heavily featured wrestlers from AAA.
Okay, so the AAA presence on the main Money in the Bank card ties into that bigger picture, that weekend theme of WWE and AAA working together. Makes sense.
And how people actually watched the show. That saw a pretty major change, too, especially internationally.
Yeah, talk about that. Still pay-per-view and Peacock in the U.S.
Correct. Traditional PPV globally, Peacock streaming in the States. But internationally, this was the first Money in the Bank to live stream on Netflix in most markets.
Netflix, wow, that's a huge shift.
It is. The source explains it's because the WWE network got merged into Netflix in most international countries starting back in January 2025. Though the source does mention it was still on the standalone WWE network in a few places where older contracts were still active.
Still, that Netflix integration is a landmark change in how wrestling is distributed globally.
Definitely. So, okay, we've set the scene, the logistics, the broadcast landscape. Let's talk about how these matches actually come together.
Yeah, the storylines. Because as the source says, these aren't just random matches. They're the payoff to scripted narratives built on TV each week.
Exactly.
And a huge part of that build-up for this event is qualifying for those Money in the Bank ladder matches. You don't just get handed a spot.
No way. You have to earn it. And the source breaks down exactly how the fields were filled for both the men's and women's matches.
Okay, let's start with the men's match. 6 spots available.
6 spots. 3 from Raw, 3 from SmackDown. And they were all decided in triple threat qualifying matches over several weeks of TV.
Right. The source has the dates and winners. Kicked off May 16th.
Yep. May 16th, SmackDown. First qualifier was Solo Sikoa. He beat Jimmy Uso, his own family member, and Rey Fenix.
Bloodline implications right there. Then the next week on SmackDown.
May 23rd. LA Knight got his spot. He went over Aleister Black and Shinsuke Nakamura.
Big win for LA Knight. Always popular. What about Raw?
Raw's qualifiers started May 26th. Penta, he got in by beating Chad Gable and Dragon Lee.
Who else from Raw?
Same night, May 26th Raw, Seth Rollins punched his ticket. He beat Finn Balor and Sami Zayn. That's a tough field to get through.
No kidding. 2 former world champs. So that's 2 from Raw. Back to SmackDown for the 3rd spot.
Right, May 30th SmackDown. Andrade got the win there, defeating Carmelo Hayes and Jacob Fatu.
Andrade, another guy with international acclaim. And the final spot.
That was decided on the June 2nd Raw. The mysterious El Grande Americano got the win over AJ Styles and CM Punk.
Wow. Beating Styles and Punk, that's a huge statement win for El Grande Americano, whoever that is.
Definitely raises eyebrows.
Yeah.
So the final lineup for the men's match was Solo Sikoa, LA Knight, Penta, Seth Rollins, Andrade, and El Grande Americano.
That's a really interesting mix, isn't it? You've got faction guys like Sikoa, Rollins maybe with his new crew.
Established stars like Andrade and Rollins, a massive fan favorite in LA Knight.
The unique lucha style of Penta, and this wild card in El Grande Americano. Lots of potential directions.
Exactly. A really diverse field, which usually makes for a great ladder match.
Okay, what about the women's side? Same structure. 6 spots, 3 from each brand.
Yep, identical structure. 6 women, 3 Raw, 3 SmackDown, all qualifying via triple threats over that same May 16th to June 2nd period. The source lays out those results too.
All right, let's run through them. First one.
May 16th, SmackDown again. Alexa Bliss got her spot, beating Chelsea Green and Mitchin.
Bliss, a former winner.
Yep, she's done this before. Then Raw had 2 qualifiers on May 19th.
Okay.
Roxanne Perez got in by defeating Becky Lynch and Natalya, and Rhea Ripley also qualified, beating Kairi Sane and Zoe Stark.
Perez getting a win over Lynch and Natalya is a big deal for her, and Ripley obviously a huge force.
Absolutely. Then back to SmackDown, May 23rd. Julia qualified. She's a big international name. She beat Charlotte Flair and Zelina Vega.
Another huge win, beating Flair. The women's field is shaping up strong.
Definitely. May 30th SmackDown, Naomi got her spot, defeating Jade Cargill and Nia Jax. That's overcoming some serious power.
For sure. And the final spot.
June 2nd Raw. Stephanie Vaquer got the last place. She also wrestled at Worlds Collide, another international talent. She beat Ivy Nile and Liv Morgan.
Okay, so the women's field. Naomi, Alexa Bliss, Julia, Rhea Ripley, Roxanne Perez, and Stephanie Vaquer.
And again, look at that mix. You've got established stars, former champions like Ripley, Bliss, Naomi.
And then this exciting group of newer faces or international stars like Perez, Julia, Vaquer.
It's like a great blend. You need that variety in a ladder match. The power game from someone like Ripley, the experience of Bliss and Naomi, the hunger and maybe different styles from Perez, Julia, and Vaquer. Sets things up nicely.
Definitely. Now, beyond the ladder matches, the source highlights some specific one-on-one rivalries that were coming to a head at this event. One big one was for the Women's Intercontinental Championship.
Right. Lyra Valkyria defending against Becky Lynch. And this one had some real heat behind it, based on the source.
Yeah, talk about the history there. It goes back to WrestleMania 41.
It does. Kind of surprisingly, they actually teamed up and won the women's tag team titles at Mania.
Oh, I remember that. But it didn't last long.
Not at all. They lost the belts the very next night on Raw. And according to the source, that loss immediately triggered Becky Lynch turning heel. She just snapped and attacked Valkyria.
Wow, talk about a quick turn. From partners to enemies just like that?
Exactly. So that set up their first big singles match at the Backlash event for Valkyria's women's IC title. Valkyria retained.
But Lynch wasn't done with her.
Nope. The source says Lynch attacked her after the Backlash match, too. Kept the feud simmering.
Okay, so how did we get to the Money in the Bank rematch?
The key moment, according to the source, was on the May 19th Raw. Becky Lynch was in her Money in the Bank qualifying match.
The one Roxanne Perez won?
Right. And Lyra Valkyria interfered, deliberately cost Becky the match and her spot in the ladder match.
Payback for the attacks, maybe? But that really escalated things.
Totally. So with Becky denied that MITB opportunity by Valkyria, she demanded another title shot, but with a twist.
This is the last chance stipulation the source mentioned.
Exactly. Proposed by Lynch on the May 26th Raw. The terms were pretty heavy. If Lynch lost this match at Money in the Bank, she could never challenge for the women's IC title again as long as Valkyria held it.
Wow. That's a huge risk for Becky. What was the other side of the stipulation?
If Lynch won, Valkyria would have to publicly acknowledge Becky Lynch as the superior competitor.
Ooh, that's personal.
Very. And the source notes this acknowledgement thing was a callback to something from an old NXT match they had, so it had history.
So it's not just about the title. It's career stakes for Lynch regarding that belt, and this deeply personal pride element forcing that acknowledgement. Huge drama built in.
Massive stakes.
Yep.
Really elevated the match beyond just a standard title defense.
Okay, now let's talk about what was probably the biggest marquee match based on the names involved. The tag team match.
Oh, yeah. Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso versus John Cena and Logan Paul.
What a pairing on that other side. This source traces this back to WrestleMania 41 as well, right? A lot happened there.
A ton happened there. First, Jey Uso wins the Royal Rumble, last eliminating Cena, which is a key detail. Then Jey wins the World Heavyweight Championship on night 1 of Mania. Huge moment for him.
Then night 2.
John Cena beats Cody Rhodes to win the undisputed WWE Championship.
The source mentions this plan he stated.
Yeah, this is wild. Cena apparently said his plan was to ruin wrestling by retiring at the end of 2025 while still holding the top title.
Whoa, that's dark. A legendary figure turning heel with the goal of basically undermining the entire industry on his way out.
Pretty shocking motivation. So after Mania, Cody took some time off, understandably. Jey Uso, as the new world champ, got into it with Logan Paul.
Okay, so how did Cena get involved with Uso and Paul leading to this tag match?
The source points to the Saturday night's main event show on May 24th. Cena confronted Jey Uso right before Uso was set to defend his title against Logan Paul.
And Cena's trying to get in Jey's head.
Exactly. Tying into his new heel persona. Questioning wrestling's integrity if a YouTuber, as he called Paul, could win the world title, linking it all back to his plan to ruin wrestling.
So he's basically saying, if this guy wins, it proves my point that wrestling is a joke, and I'm right to want to destroy it as champion.
Pretty much that, yeah. And then, during the Uso versus Paul title match, Cena actually tried to help Logan Paul win.
Wait, even after trash-talking him as a YouTuber?
Yep, a very strange alliance there. But Cody Rhodes made his return right then and stopped Cena's interference.
Okay, so Cody's back, Cena's aligned with Paul. The tag match makes sense now.
Right. Cody announced it, him and his buddy Jey Uso against Cena and Paul. Match confirmed for Money in the Bank.
The layers there are insane. You've got champion versus champion with Uso and Cena.
You've got Cody seeking revenge against Cena for WrestleMania.
You've got the hero Uso being targeted by this cynical Cena-Paul duo.
And it's all under the shadow of Cena's planned retirement. And this being, as the source explicitly states, his final Money in the Bank appearance as an active wrestler.
Man, the pressure and the story in that match alone. Incredible. What kind of dynamic would Cena and Paul even have as partners?
Yeah, it was a huge question going in, right? The ultimate company man turned ultimate cynic, paired with the ultimate self-promoting outsider. Fascinating clash.
Okay, one more match build-up mentioned in the source, and this one was different. The Intercontinental title match.
Yeah, Dominik Mysterio defending against Octagón Jr. This one, as the source notes, came together literally on the day of Money in the Bank.
How did that happen? It was during the Worlds Collide show earlier.
Exactly. Dominik, with Liv Morgan, was apparently at ringside watching a match where Octagón Jr.'s team beat the LWO.
And Dom being Dom, he couldn't just let them celebrate.
Nope. Source says he interrupted, started mocking Octagón Jr., specifically bringing up Dom's own father, an LWO leader, pushing buttons.
Classic Dominik, so that led to a fight.
Led to a brawl, yeah. And right there, in the heat of the moment, Dominik issued the challenge. His IC title on the line later that night at Money in the Bank.
And Octagón Jr. accepted.
Accepted on the spot. So, boom, you've got an IC title match booked just hours before the main show starts.
That's wild. Adds a real element of spontaneity compared to the other matches that were built for weeks. Okay, I think we've covered the setup pretty thoroughly. Let's get into the event itself, match by match.
And it's clear they put thought into it right from the kickoff show's end.
Right, it wasn't just like lights on, show starts. There's that transition. They kick things off with the national anthem. Victor Solomon performed it.
From The Voice. Top 5 finalist, yeah.
Yeah.
That sets a certain tone, doesn't it? A bit formal, maybe patriotic, before the wrestling chaos begins.
Totally.
Gives it that big event feel right away.
It does. And then the main broadcast kicks off, and boom, those sweeping aerial shots.
Oh, yeah, the classic LA montage, Dodger Stadium, the Hollywood sign.
Grounds you immediately. Before you even see the arena properly, you know where you are. And the commentary apparently leaned into that.
Sources say they mentioned WWE's history in the area, so it's like, we belong here, this place is part of our story too.
Yeah.
It connects the event to a legacy.
Makes sense. And, speaking of history, LA itself, wow, WWE has run so many big shows there.
Oh, for sure. Venues all over the city.
Yeah.
WrestleMania, SummerSlam.
Yeah.
LA is a major hub for them.
But the sources pointed out something really specific, tying it right back to this event 20 years ago.
Yeah, this is cool. 20 years before this show, the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match happened right there in the LA area. WrestleMania goes Hollywood.
Talk about full circle. Holding the 20th anniversary, basically, of the concept in the city where it debuted. That adds a nice little layer, doesn't it?
It really does. A nice bit of historical resonance. Grounds the whole thing.
And they didn't waste time getting to the action, did they? The sources highlight how quickly they previewed the night's matches.
Yeah, very efficient. They ran down the card, showing the variety, hitting the big Money in the Bank matches, obviously, both men's and women's.
Stacked lineups for those. And woven into these previews, the sources noted all that B-roll footage.
Ah, yes. The arrival shots and backstage glimpses.
Not just generic stuff either. Specific moments like Cody Rhodes turning up and Jey Uso is there with his son.
Jace. That's a nice touch. Then you get Logan Paul, naturally, with his whole entourage. Very different vibe. Next, we see Becky Lynch walking around backstage as Michael Cole reiterates the stipulations in her match.
And then contrast that with Liv Morgan and Dominik Mysterio just sitting on a sofa backstage.
Kind of casual, almost intimate. The sources pointed that out. And also Alexa Bliss with her Lily doll. Little character beats.
Right. And Seth Rollins with his crew, including Paul Heyman, which is interesting. LA Knight walking in. Rhea Ripley texting.
It feels deliberate, doesn't it? Like the sources suggest these aren't just random clips. They're little story starters, hints about mood or alliances.
Exactly. Planting seeds, like you said. This all leads into the main video package, which sounds like it tied everything together.
It started off almost cynical.
How so?
Well, it was drawing parallels between chasing money in the real world and what motivates wrestlers. It actually said something like, money is the answer to 99% of the world's problems.
Whoa, okay. That's quite a statement to lead with for a wrestling show built around a money briefcase.
Right. It kind of frames the wrestlers as just being motivated by greed, by the potential payday of being champion. But then almost immediately,
It flipped.
it flipped completely.
Yeah.
The video package pivoted and said, no, actually, Money in the Bank isn't really about money. It's about power. It's about opportunity. Changing your life, maybe your last chance at the top. The contract itself becomes a currency, not just the potential cash.
So you get this immediate contrast setup. Is it about the literal money and wealth? Or is it about the status, the power, the chance to grab that brass ring? It sort of asks you to think about what's really driving these people.
Exactly. It adds this thematic layer, right?
Right.
Are they climbing for financial security or for the prestige, the main event spot, the ability to dictate terms? It gives you something more to chew on than just grab the briefcase.
Climbing the ladder for the contract, climbing the corporate ladder, that kind of thing.
Pretty much. And then back in the arena, pure spectacle.
Yeah.
The briefcase is up there, pyro goes off, the theme music, cash in, is blasting. Michael Cole officially welcomes everyone.
And declares it sold out. Although,
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
a little detail about that.
Oh, yeah. The sources mentioned that despite Cole saying sold out, you could apparently see empty seats right at the start. Reports suggested fans were still getting in.
Huh. A small discrepancy, but interesting. That little bit of reality versus the polished presentation.
It really is.
Let's talk sponsorships, because based on these sources, this show felt pretty loaded with
Oh, absolutely loaded. You couldn't miss it. But then you look at the ring itself, just plastered with logos.
Yeah, that's become pretty standard, I guess.
The turnbuckles had 7-Eleven logos on them. One source specifically flagged that as feeling kind of new, or at least more prominent than usual.
I noticed that too. It felt very visible.
It did. And then you get to the ladders themselves, the actual props for the main matches.
Branded ladder.
Yep. Mentioned a cinnamon whiskey branded ladder, integrating sponsors onto the key props like that.
Yeah.
That feels like another level.
Wow. Yeah, you can't really miss a bright red ladder with a, flaming logo on it when someone's risking their neck climbing it.
Exactly. Makes the sponsor part of the action, literally. And then, of course, Cash App was the overall presenting sponsor.
Yeah.
Which, fits the Money in the Bank theme perfectly.
Very on the nose, yeah.
And then you finally land at the commentary desk. Michael Cole, Pat McAfee, Wade Barrett, ready to go.
And Wade Barrett apparently dropped a cool little factoid right away.
He did. The sources got this. He mentioned it was Michael Cole's 28th anniversary, his play-by-play debut way back in '97 on Shotgun.
Wow, 28 years. That's quite specific. Dropping that right at the start.
It's a nice piece of trivia. Adds a bit of history.
We've got this fascinating stack of material in front of us, notes, reports, audio clips, all zeroing in on one single event.
Yeah, and it's not a political summit this time, is it?
No, not quite. We're diving deep into the women's Money in the Bank ladder match from June 7th, 2025. It's got its own kind of complexity, intensity, maybe even strategy.
Oh, definitely. Ladder matches are pure chaos, but there's method in the madness sometimes.
Exactly.
Right, because Money in the Bank, it's a huge deal. That briefcase offers a shortcut, a guaranteed title shot.
Yeah, a massive opportunity. And these sources give us a great look at the risks, the planning, the individual efforts that went into that match.
And this one had a specific dynamic highlighted in the notes, didn't it?
It did. A real mix. Veterans, established names, clashing with some really exciting sort of up-and-coming stars, all trying to grab that one briefcase hanging up there.
That's a classic recipe for drama. Physical endurance, mental games, and just the sheer danger of the ladders themselves. It's a lot.
Absolutely. And looking at all this material together, we can hopefully get beyond just the highlights and understand the stories, the history, and what this result means going forward.
Let's do it.
Okay, so setting the scene. The sources confirm this match kicked off the Money in the Bank 2025 show, June 7th. And the commentary note suggests the energy was, well, electric right from the start.
Makes sense. Big match to open.
Ring announcer Alicia Taylor handled the intros, and we had the commentary team, Michael Cole, Pat McAfee, Wade Barrett, calling the action. Their insights are all over these notes.
Right, and they laid out the rules pretty clearly. The sources confirm what was announced. 6 competitors. No countouts, no disqualifications, so weapons, anything goes, basically.
And crucially, no pinfalls, no submissions.
The only way to win is to climb that ladder in the middle of the ring and physically grab the briefcase. Simple goal, incredibly difficult execution.
And the sources really hammer home what that briefcase represents. It's not just symbolic, there's a contract inside.
A contract for a guaranteed championship match, anytime, any place, for up to a year.
It's framed consistently across the material as the ultimate shortcut, straight to a title match.
But there's a fascinating layer here, specifically for the women's division, that the sources highlight. This was, historically, the 10th women's Money in the Bank ladder match.
10, okay.
And here's the kicker, emphasized by an on-screen graphic mentioned in the reports. Before this match, every single woman who won that briefcase went on to successfully cash in and become champion. 100% success rate.
Wait, 100%? Every single one?
Every single one, according to the historical data presented.
Wow. Okay, that changes everything, doesn't it? That's not just a chance anymore. History says if you win this, you are becoming champion within the year.
Exactly. That statistic, cited right there in the sources, just adds this incredible weight, this pressure before the bell even rings. It turns the opportunity into, almost a prophecy.
You have to think that's playing on everyone's minds, the competitors, the commentators, everyone watching.
It absolutely has to. It makes winning not just a victory, but signing your name on the future championship roll. That history definitely fueled the fire we saw.
Okay, so who were the 6 women stepping into this pressure cooker? The sources list them. Alexa Bliss, Roxanne Perez, Naomi, Stephanie Valkyria, Julia, and Rhea Ripley.
And the dynamic between them was a big focus. Sources called it a mix of generations. You had the, quote, OGs, the veterans like Bliss, Naomi, and Ripley.
Right.
Against the, quote, young bucks, the newer faces, mostly from NXT, like Perez, Julia, and Rebecca Kerr. So 3 experienced players versus 3 in their first ever Money in the Bank.
And even among the veterans, there was that surprising detail the sources picked up on. Rhea Ripley, dominant, former champion, huge star.
Yeah.
This was her first ladder match ever.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All her accomplishments, but never a ladder match.
Nope. First time. Which makes it even more interesting that she was still seen as a favorite.
Yeah, that says a lot about her presence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even without that specific experience.
Definitely. Okay, let's break down each competitor based on the details in these sources. Entrances, graphics, commentary points. First up, Alexa Bliss.
Okay, Bliss. The sources make a big deal about her history with this match. She won it in 2018.
Right.
And as Michael Cole pointed out on commentary, she cashed it in that same night on Nia Jax to win the title. So she knows exactly what this opportunity means and how to capitalize.
And this was her 4th time in this match. Plus, she's a 5-time world champion overall. She's got the credentials.
For sure. And her character, well, you can't ignore that. Cole's comment about the freaky old doll, Lily, was noted. It reminds you she brings this unique, unsettling vibe to the ring.
As another layer. Okay, next. Roxanne Perez, the Prodigy.
Yeah, the Prodigy. She qualified by beating Natalya and Becky Lynch in a triple threat, which is impressive in itself.
Definitely.
Commentary apparently spent a lot of time hyping her year. Her record run in the Royal Rumble over 1 hour and 7 minutes, wasn't it?
That's what the notes say, yeah. Over 1 hour, 7 minutes. Plus Elimination Chamber, then moving to Raw. A big year.
And Pat McAfee apparently really leaned into that Prodigy nickname, mentioning she started training at 15 and describing her as damn near flawless in the ring.
High praise.
The sources also caught commentary suggesting a win here could change her family's life, even change wrestling itself, positioning her as a potential future cornerstone.
And her history with 2 others in the match, Julia and Stephanie Valkyria, was brought up too. Coming up from NXT together, that brief tag team on Raw, trading the NXT title.
Adds a personal edge to the whole thing.
Exactly. Makes the interactions mean more.
Okay, Naomi. How'd she get in?
Naomi beat Jade Cargill and Nia Jax in her qualifying triple threat. Another tough field. And for her, this match had some history attached. It was her 5th Money in the Bank match.
Yeah, 5th appearance. Tied the record with Becky Lynch and Natalya for most appearances.
Okay.
But here's the key fact the sources stressed. She'd never won it before. 0 for 4 heading into this.
Interesting. All those chances never quite got there.
And the sources really focus on her current persona, describing her as a very different woman, someone to proceed with caution around. The commentary notes call her more cutthroat, more demented, more dangerous.
Her look reflected that too, right? The money bills, the caution tape on her gear.
Yeah, visually reinforcing the change. And her storyline motivations were key. The loss to Jade Cargill at WrestleMania was mentioned, plus that incident where she apparently threw Jade Cargill through a car windshield 6 months ago.
Whoa, okay.
So commentary framed this win as potential leverage over Jade. Plus, there was mention of a jilted lover dynamic with Bianca Belair adding more fuel.
So multiple angles driving her. Sources seemed high on this version of her character.
Very high. Called it her best character run, for sure, praising the excellent rebranded character. Seems like this darker edge was connecting.
Gotcha. Next, Stephanie Valkyria, La Promera.
Now, Valkyria's situation was pretty unique, maybe even concerning, according to the sources. This was her 3rd match in just 24 hours.
3rd match? How?
Tag win on SmackDown the night before, then another tag win earlier the same day at Worlds Collide with Lola Vice.
That's insane scheduling for any match, let alone a Money in the Bank ladder match.
Right. And like Ripley, this was her first ever WWE ladder match.
So inexperience in the stipulation and physically exhausted.
Exactly. Commentary based on the notes was really worried, calling it a suicide mission, saying she was severely sub 100% depleted.
But they still saw potential.
Oh, yeah. Despite the condition concerns, they also called her special, phenomenal, stupendous. The idea was maybe she's just that good she could overcome it. Her NXT history with Perez and Julia, trading the title, was also part of her narrative.
And the sources noted she'd made a big splash since her call-up.
Yeah, described as maybe the hottest of the 3 call-ups, presented as a babyface, and tagged as a definite future world champion. Lots of expectation, despite the immediate physical challenge.
Okay, Julia. The beautiful madness.
Julia's ambitions were clearly stated in the sources. She wanted Money in the Bank, and she had her eye on the women's U.S. title, held by Zelina Vega.
She backed that up too, didn't she? Beat Vega the night before.
Yep, beat Vega. And someone commentary called a secret Irvis showed she was serious about collecting gold.
And her background.
Commentary highlighted her NXT run, former women's champion, Iron Survivor challenger, but also stressed her international experience, saying she made her name in Japan and calling her a global sensation.
How is her style described?
Very comfortable in between those rows, meeting the ladders, and her presentation as elegant but fierce. Nice contrast there.
And again, that NXT connection with Perez and Valkyria trading the title, the brief tag team with Roxanne, it links them all.
Absolutely. And like Valkyria and Perez, sources pegged her as a future world champion too. So another potential star looking for that breakout moment.
Finally, Rhea Ripley. Mommy.
Yeah, mommy. Probably the biggest star power in the match. Widely seen as the favorite by commentary and sources, despite, as we said, it being her first ladder match ever.
Did the sources mention any nerves from her?
Actually, yeah. One note said she admitted to having butterflies earlier that day. Added a little bit of vulnerability to the dominant image.
How'd she qualify?
Beat Kairi Sane and Zoe Stark. Commentary noted Zoe Stark had an injured knee, which might have played a part.
And she had history in that building.
She did. Won a world title there back in January. So positive vibes in that arena for her. Her presence was described as just having this intimidating aura, creating a power disparity with the others.
Commentary seemed a bit conflicted on whether she needed the win.
Yeah, they kind of debated it. Like, she's Rhea Ripley. She can probably demand a title shot whenever she wants if she needs the briefcase. But they concluded it still fit her character, the dominance, taking any advantage. Pat McAfee apparently felt she'd mastered the ladder match dynamics quickly.
Any other history mentioned?
Just a brief reference to some past issues with Nia Jax.
Okay, so that's the lineup.
No.
A really potent mix. Champions, rising stars, shared histories, physical question marks, historical weight, all colliding in a ladder match. Let's get into how the sources describe the chaos unfolding.
Well, right from the bell is exactly what you'd expect.
Chaos.
Chaos. Sources say the veterans, Naomi, Bliss, Ripley, went right after the younger competitors trying to clear the ring.
Really power move.
Yeah. And there was this specific spot noted early on. Naomi apparently launched Bliss towards Ripley.
Okay.
And Ripley caught Bliss and used her legs to dropkick a ladder into Naomi, like used her as a weapon. But then, right after, the sources highlighted this odd little moment. Bliss and Ripley shared a quick smile, like mutual respect or maybe amusement.
Huh. Interesting.
But it didn't last. Julian and Perez jumped back in, broke up the love fest, as one source called it, back to business.
Ladders came into play quickly, I assume.
Instantly. Stephanie Valkyria brought the first one in, but Naomi, the veteran, made her pay for it immediately. Naomi was really aggressive early. Sources noted lots of kicks, using the ladder effectively, spinning back kick, baseball slide into the ladder, X Factor onto the ladder, heat seeker onto a ladder in the corner, really showing that new edge.
What about the others early on?
Bliss was active too. Punches, knees, drop toe hold into the ladder, a sit and splash onto someone draped over it. Julia drove Bliss into a ladder, used stomps and knees. Valkyria, despite the fatigue concerns, hit a springboard crossbody and showed off her kicks. And Ripley, well, her power made her an instant target for everyone.
Which leads into a major sequence, right? The Ripley burial.
Exactly. This was a big turning point, described vividly in the sources. Ripley tried to hit the razor's edge on Roxanne Perez near a ladder.
Bad place for that.
Very bad. Perez countered, turned Ripley's power against her into a Hurricane Rana.
Nice hammer.
That sent Ripley crashing backwards into the ladder. Huge impact.
And Perez followed up.
Oh, yeah. Hit a double springboard moonsault off the ropes onto Ripley, who is now stuck on that ladder. Just spectacular athleticism.
But that wasn't even the end of it.
Nope. Julia then joined Perez. Temporary alliance, you know, against the biggest threat. They worked together to sandwich Ripley under a ladder. Commentary noted they actually struggled a bit with the ladder itself, which shows how awkward things can get.
Right, even simple things become hard in that environment.
But they managed it, and then they piled more ladders on top of Ripley outside the ring, just buried her under steel.
How long was she out?
Commentary estimated around 7 minutes and 37 seconds, a significant chunk of the match. Pat McAfee called her eventual return the Undertaker gift. It was clearly a strategy by the others, especially Perez and Julia, to neutralize Ripley.
Smart play. Meanwhile, what about Valkyria, the one running on fumes?
Incredibly impressive, despite the narrative of exhaustion. The sources detail her hitting a dragon screw on Naomi's knee, trying to weaken her. Landed a crisp, snap vertical suplex, And at one point, she tried climbing the main ladder with Julia literally on her back, trying to pull her down.
Wow, that's strength.
Yeah, commentary apparently debated her power versus her depletion during that com. It was a great visual of her fighting spirit.
And she had a huge spot involving Ripley, too.
Massive spot. Drew a huge reaction, sources say. Ripley was on a ladder bridge in the corner. Back hair countered whatever Ripley was attempting and hit her finisher, the Devil's Kiss, onto Ripley on the bridge.
Ouch. On the ladder bridge.
Yeah. Wade Barrett apparently yelled it was the most popular move in WWE right then. Huge pop from the crowd. Commentary even speculated it could be a death blow to Ripley in the match. Really sold Valkyrie's impact.
Then there was another big complex spot involving multiple people and ladders.
Yes, the double bridge spot. Sources describe how they set up 2 ladder bridges, one on each side of the main ladder. Kind of parallel bridges.
Okay, setting the stage for something big.
And they delivered stereo high spots. Roxanne Perez hit her Pop Rocks finisher on Stephanie Valkyria, who was on one bridge.
Simultaneously.
Almost exactly. On the other bridge, Alexa Bliss hit her Code Red move on Naomi. Commentary called it dueling Code Reds or Pop Rocks. Pat McAfee apparently yelled, "Let the bodies hit the floor," as they crashed onto the steel.
That sounds incredible but dangerous.
Totally. Sources called it amazing and scary and gave double respect to Naomi and Valkyria for taking those bumps onto the ladders. A real highlight reel moment.
Now, Perez and Julia, they worked together to bury Ripley, but that alliance didn't last.
Not at all. Their rivalry kicked back in hard. Sources describe them battling at the top of the main ladder later on, trading punches, haymakers, hair pulling. Julia slammed Perez's head on the ladder rungs, hit her with a headbutt.
Oof.
Brutal. Commentary noted how fitting it felt that it might come down to just those two, given their history.
But the veterans started coming back into it?
Yep. Ripley finally emerged from the ladder pile after that 7 minutes, 37 seconds, apparently, or right after Perez and Julia for payback. Alexa Bliss recovered too. There was a sequence noted where Ripley hit the riptide on Julia, and around the same time, Bliss hit Sister Abigail on Perez. Took out the 2 newcomers who'd been central to the action.
Clearing the field, which led to
A final confrontation everyone expected, maybe. Bliss and Ripley, steering each other down after taking out the others. They both started climbing the main ladder, opposite sides. Looked like the final battle for the briefcase.
But there was a twist.
A huge twist. Coming from someone who'd been maybe a bit overlooked at that exact moment, Naomi. She'd taken that dragon screw to the knee earlier. One source noted she was recovering alone in the ring for a bit.
Right.
She re-entered the picture. But instead of trying to climb with them, she went to the base of the ladder Bliss and Ripley were on.
Oh, no.
And just tipped the whole thing over.
Sending them crashing.
Crashing down onto that horizontal ladder braid, still set up in the corner. A massively decisive, ruthless move. Took out both main threats in one go.
Wow. Smart. Brutal, but smart.
And with Bliss and Ripley down, the pass was clear. Sources describe Naomi climbing the ladder alone, the crowd buzzing, and her reaching up and unclipping the briefcase.
That was it.
That was it. Official time noted, 25 minutes and 10 seconds. Your winner, Naomi.
25 minutes and 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Incredible sequence of events. So we've covered the what and the how. Let's get into the analysis, the implications, the so what. How did the sources view this match overall?
It's interesting. There wasn't total consensus. Some sources were glowing, calling it excellent, even an all-timer for Women's Money in the Bank. They felt everyone came out looking better, the design was smart, the spots were memorable.
High praise, but not universal.
No. Others were more critical, especially of the first half, calling it mostly bored or maybe a bit awkward. They usually agreed it picked up significantly in the second half, though. One summed it up as solid if unspectacular.
So a bit divisive, maybe depended on who you wanted to win.
One source explicitly suggested that. Your personal investment could definitely color your perception of the match quality, which makes sense.
But what about individual performances? Did sources agree there?
Mostly, yeah. The consensus was that everybody had time to shine. Naomi, obviously, as the winner. But Valkyria got huge praise for her performance, despite the fatigue. Julia and Roxanne Perez were seen as really stepping up and looking strong.
Elevated the newcomers.
Definitely. Sources use that word elevation, especially for the NXT call-ups. And Ripley and Bliss, their star power was still evident, even though they didn't win. Everyone seemed to gain something.
But the main focus of the analysis was Naomi's win, right? Why did sources feel it was the right call?
It really tied back to her character transformation. All that talk about her being The best character run, a different cat, ruthless. The win felt like validation for that shift.
So the briefcase empowers that character.
Exactly. Sources explained it gives her instant credibility, an added element. It's that shortcut we talked about. But more than that, it gives her leverage and power, especially in her ongoing story with Jade Cargill.
Right. It changes her position entirely. She's not just reacting anymore. She holds a major card.
Precisely. She goes from maybe being defined by past losses or issues to being a central figure who could dictate what happens next.
And the sources explored those future possibilities, particularly with Jade.
Oh yeah, big time. The win puts Naomi on an even playing field with really anybody, sources said. The Jade dynamic is the most obvious. Will Jade win a title before Naomi cashes in? Or will Naomi wait until Jade is champion and then strike?
Creates instant drama.
Tons of it. And with Jade in the Queen of the Ring tournament too, Naomi's win puts their story into the forefront of the division. Speculation ran towards a potential SummerSlam clash or cash-in involving Jade. Maybe even Bianca Belair gets pulled back in.
And the briefcase lets Naomi lean into the new character more.
Sources suggested exactly that.
Yeah.
It lets her flex this character, use the threat of the cash-in to be even more menacing and unpredictable.
And we have to come back to that statistic, the 100% success rate for women cashing in. That has to factor into the analysis.
Absolutely critical context. The sources stressed it. It makes Naomi's win feel less like just an opportunity and more like an inevitability based on history. It massively boosts the perceived impact she's going to have.
Okay, let's take a look at what Dave Meltzer had to say about this match.
Yeah, it's Dave Meltzer's review, just his take on the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. So let's start with the rating he gave it. You probably saw it.
Yeah, 3.5 stars, right?
3.5 stars.
Okay, so solid, pretty good, but not like an all-timer in his book.
Right. Leave some room.
So what did work for him? According to this review, what were the highlights that pushed it towards that score?
Well, he points straight to the crowd. It says the biggest pop, the loudest reaction came when Stephanie Valkyria and Rhea Ripley were facing off.
Ah, okay, so their interactions really connected. That makes sense. Crowd energy is key.
Totally. It shows what's landing live.
Were there, like, specific moves or sequences he called out?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Ripley's dropkick on Julia, got to mention, seemed like a strong spot.
Okay.
But the real standout, according to the review, was Valkyria's move, the Devil's Kiss.
Oh, yeah. Where did that happen?
To Ripley, while they were both on the ladder bridge.
Wow, okay. That's a tricky spot.
For sure. And Meltzer specifically wrote that that moment got over big with the audience, hitting something complex like that up high in a bridge.
Yeah, that adds danger, drama. I can see why that would pop the crowd.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was a definite positive noted.
Okay, so we have these impactful spots, strong crowd connection for certain pairings. Those are the pluses.
Right.
But it's a ladder match. They can get a bit messy. What were the criticisms? What did this review say dragged it down a bit?
Well, he mentioned, and I quote, lots of the usual climbing and being taken down.
Ah, the standard ladder match formula. The repetition.
Exactly. That sort of fundamental structure. And critically, he felt the match lost momentum late.
Okay, how so?
He specifically pointed out there was a lot of climbing towards the end, suggesting maybe it got a bit tedious, less inventive as it went on.
Right, just trading climbs without big saves or spots can feel like it's stalling. I get that.
Yeah, kind of spinning wheels, maybe.
Now, you mentioned Stephanie Valkyria. There was another interesting detail in the review about her day, wasn't there?
Yes, yeah. This is pretty specific. The review highlighted she'd actually wrestled earlier that same day.
On a different show?
Yeah, on the AAA Worlds Collide show.
Wow, okay. Double duty. That sounds pretty demanding on the surface.
It does, but the review adds some important context.
What's that?
Meltzer noted she only wrestled for about, 2 minutes in a tag match earlier.
Oh, only 2 minutes.
Yeah. And the implication there is key. The commentary team might hype up wrestling twice in one day as this huge feat.
Right, build the narrative.
Exactly. But Meltzer's pointing out the actual physical toll was probably minimal. It kind of scrutinizes that narrative, suggests maybe it wasn't the big endurance test it might sound like when evaluating this performance.
That's fascinating. It's like peeling back the curtain a bit, looking past the hype to the actual, workload.
Precisely. It shows how this review looked at the context, not just the story being told.
Okay, before we wrap the analysis, any other factual tidbits the sources included? Sponsors, attendees?
Yeah, a few quick mentions. Sponsors like Wheatley American Vodka, WWE Slam by Tops, Papa John's Cricket were noted as being featured.
Standard stuff. What about attendees?
Interestingly, they showed several wrestlers in the crowd who had been part of the Worlds Collide event earlier that day. Figures like El Hijo del Vikingo, Mr. Iguana,
With his plush iguana.
Dr. Wagner Jr., Psycho Clown, and Conan, who'd done commentary for Worlds Collide, just connecting the two events.
And usual promotions.
Yep, Riyadh season, SummerSlam dates, and ticket info for the show in New Jersey. Standard broadcast elements captured.
Okay, so summarizing the narrative strengths here. The veterans versus newcomers setup worked well. The temporary alliances added layers. You had big memorable spots like the Devil's Kiss and the Double Bridge.
Right.
And crucially, the outcome with Naomi winning sets up compelling future stories, especially with Jade Cargill.
Couldn't have said it better. It hit a lot of the right notes for a match like this.
All right, that was a really detailed look at one specific match, pulling from all angles in these sources.
So today, we're really digging into something interesting, maybe unexpected from a big recent wrestling event.
Yeah, we're focusing on that impromptu match, right? The Intercontinental Championship one.
Exactly. Dominik Mysterio versus Octagón Jr. at Money in the Bank.
And we've got a good mix of sources to work with here.
We do. And even some surprising details about how the whole event was produced and well promoted. It wasn't just a match in isolation.
Not at all. It came from this whole confrontation earlier in the day, and it happened during a broadcast that was just, well, packed with other stuff.
Stuff you might miss if you're just watching casually.
Exactly.
And these broader themes that honestly were kind of hard to ignore in the source material.
Especially one particular theme we'll get into later.
Absolutely. We're going to cover the brawl that started it all, some really specific moves in the ring.
And yeah, a pretty deep look at the sponsorships. The sources had a lot to say about those.
Okay, let's jump in. How did this match even happen? It wasn't on the original card, was it?
No, it wasn't. And what's really fascinating, based on the sources, is that it all started just hours before Money in the Bank at this other event called Worlds Collide.
The sources framed it as pretty significant, right? Not just some random pre-show thing.
Definitely not. Commentary and the promotion around it called it the first big event of this new partnership.
The WWE acquiring AAA partnership.
That's the one, AAA, the big Lucha Libre promotion out of Mexico. So Worlds Collide was supposed to be the first real showcase of that collaboration.
And it was streamed live on YouTube.
Yeah, WWE's YouTube channel. So accessible, but maybe not quite the main stage yet.
Okay, so Worlds Collide is happening, mixing WWE and AAA. What went down there that led directly to this Dominik Octagón Jr. match later?
Well, early on in that Worlds Collide broadcast, Rey Mysterio showed up.
The legend himself. But he was injured at the time, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. The sources mentioned he was out with an injury, so it was more like an honored guest appearance.
Right.
And during this appearance, Octagón Jr. came out and presented Rey with a mask.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the sources were specific. They described Octagón Jr. as one of Rey's biggest fans. It was framed as this moment of real respect.
From a rising lucha star to an icon he looks up to.
Exactly. Pure admiration, that's how the sources painted it. Octagón Jr. was actually set to wrestle right after that, kicking off the action in a 6-man tag match.
Okay. And Dominik Mysterio, Rey's son, was also there.
He was, at ringside, with Liv Morgan. Which, you know, given Dominik's full character, that immediately set something up.
Right. His dirty Dom persona is pretty much built on disrespecting his dad.
Precisely. So Octagón Jr. goes and wins a 6-man tag match. Looks good, gets the victory.
Establishes himself on this new platform.
But then, according to the sources, right after the win, Dominik starts getting into things with him from ringside.
Just like that. Didn't waste any time.
Nope. Dominik, playing that arrogant heel character, apparently cuts a promo right there, aimed at Octagón Jr.
And what did he say? Did he go after Octagón Jr. directly?
He did, but he also went right for the jugular, you know? Doubled down on the disrespect towards his own father, Rey Mysterio.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, the sources say he specifically called Rey a deadbeat.
Wow.
Yeah.
At this event, celebrating a partnership with a lucha company, right after Octagón Jr. showed Rey so much respect, that's bold.
It's incredibly provocative, and that's the key, right? For Octagón Jr., who just had this moment honoring Rey, hearing Dominik talk about his own father like that.
He wasn't going to stand for it.
Exactly. The sources really emphasize this. Octagón Jr. took major exception. It felt like a genuine character reaction to a huge insult against someone he idolizes.
And that's what kicked off the physical stuff.
That was the spark. The verbal insult immediately led to this big brawl. Dominik, Octagón Jr. going at it.
Chaos at ringside.
Total chaos. Sources mention officials, other wrestlers rushing in, trying to pull them apart. It was heated, looked unplanned, really fueled by that disrespect.
And in the middle of all that chaos, Dominik makes his move.
He does. While they're being separated, Dominik just throws down the gauntlet, challenges Octagón Jr. to a match.
It's not just any match, though.
No, a match later that night at the main Money in the Bank event.
And he put something major on the line.
His Intercontinental Championship. Just like that. Declared he'd defend it against Octagón Jr. later that night.
That is quite a decision. How did commentary react to that?
They called it an interesting decision, according to the sources, which feels like a massive understatement, right, given how sudden it all was?
Interesting is one word for it. Seems reckless, maybe. But also, kind of perfect for his character.
Totally fits Dirty Dom. This whole sequence, it just perfectly sets up that dynamic the sources talk about. Dominik disrespecting the legacy, disrespecting his dad.
Trying to make his own name by tearing down the foundation.
Right. And Octagón Jr. is the total opposite, all respect and admiration for Rhea. He's the perfect foil.
So Dominik challenging him, especially after Octagón Jr. showed respect to Rhea, feels like Dominik trying to steal that spotlight.
That's how some analysis framed it, yeah. Like he's riding his dad's coattails to even be at Worlds Collide, but then trashing him.
Yeah.
And challenging Octagón Jr., who just earned his spot and showed respect, putting the title on the line on the big stage. That's peak arrogance.
It's a statement. I'm better than this guy you admire. I'm better than this whole AAA thing. I'll prove it tonight with my title.
Exactly. Raises the stakes, creates instant heat, and flows directly from that brawl. It's arrogance personified.
And wasn't there a video package before this match promoting something totally different?
There was, yeah. Which felt a little weird timing-wise, according to the sources. They aired this package about the World Heavyweight Championship match happening on Raw the next night, Jey Uso versus Gunther.
Recapping their feud?
Yeah, Jey winning at Mania, Gunther wanting the rematch. And it highlighted Jey getting involved in other stuff, like helping Cody Rhodes, suggesting maybe he spread too thin.
Okay. Standard hype package.
But the sources noted a production detail. After the package, graphics for the Uso-Gunther match came up, but commentary apparently said nothing over them, just silence.
Strange. Just let the graphics do the work. Shows the layers of production, I guess, even if the flow feels off.
Definitely.
Okay, so the fuse was lit at Worlds Collide. Challenge made, title on the line. Fast forward a few hours to Money in the Bank itself. What was the vibe for this sudden championship match?
Right, so we shift to the main show, and yeah, it was billed as an impromptu matchup for the Intercontinental title, born straight from that earlier fight. Added some real unpredictability to the card.
Who was on the call for this one?
Alicia Taylor did the ring announcing.
Okay.
And at the commentary desk, you had Michael Cole, Pat McAfee, and Wade Barrett. Their reactions definitely shaped how this whole thing was presented.
And Dominik's entrance. Sounds like he leaned right into the provocation, didn't he?
Oh, completely. He came out wearing a black Rey Mysterio Sr. mask.
Again, with the disrespect.
Exactly. In lucha culture, the mask is huge, right? It's identity, heritage, so wearing it is already loaded. But then he ripped it off and just threw it on the ground.
Oof. That's blatant.
Commentary jumped all over it, called it complete disrespect to the luchadors who paved the way.
So he's not just dissing his dad now, he's dissing the entire tradition that Octagón Jr. represents.
That's exactly how commentary framed it. Like, Dominik sees himself as the greatest luchador on the planet, doing AAA a favor by even showing up at Worlds Collide.
And when his dad gave some attention there, or when the brawl happened.
Right. In Dominik's twisted view, his deadbeat dad tried to upstage him and failed. So throwing the mask down is his backlash, his way of saying he's the star, not the tradition, not the legends.
It really feeds into that narrative of him trying to escape his father's shadow by burning it down.
It does, and it ties back to that question commentary asked. Why on earth would Dominik want to put his title on the line?
Right, why volunteer a defense like that?
The character answer. It's a power move, a statement about his dominance. He's saying AAA is okay, sure, fantastic, but not Dirty Dom fantastic.
Wow.
He even apparently suggested the rest of the AAA luchadors are basically fighting for third place globally because he's number one. The arrogance is off the charts.
Just pure heel confidence. Anything else notable visually during the entrance?
Couple of small things. The sources mention a fan sign in the background saying Def Rebel sucks.
Huh. Referencing the WWE music producers. Adds a bit of live crowd flavor.
Yeah. And of course, Liv Morgan was with him. Sources called her his great woman, Baby Cakes. the snarky tag champ. She's a key part of his whole act.
She plays that role perfectly. Okay, so entrance is done. But before the bell even rings, the sources noted something else was already very apparent. Sponsorships.
Oh, yeah. And this is a theme that just runs right through the coverage of the whole event. It started even before this match officially began.
How so?
The match itself was presented in part by Cricket.
A phone company.
Yep, identified as a phone company. And commentary immediately followed up, plugging their fast and powerful nationwide 5G coverage just seamlessly woven into the match intro.
A sponsor plug for a match added just hours before. All right, so the scene is set. The backstory of the characters, the sudden stakes, the sponsorship starting to pop up. Let's get into the match itself. What happened in the ring during those reported 4 minutes and 55 seconds?
Right. So officially, WWE Intercontinental Champion Dominik Mysterio with Liv Morgan versus Octagón Jr. from AAA.
And physically, a bit of a difference here.
Yeah, one source pointed this out. It's rare, but Dominik was actually the bigger guy in this match, listed around 200 pounds to Octagón Jr.'s 185, a slight size edge for Dom.
Okay, bell rings. How does it start?
Sources mention an early feeling out process, but commentary apparently felt right away it didn't feel good for Dominik.
Meaning Octagón Jr. took control early.
Seems like it. One report called Octagón Jr. a blur from the word go. Just immediate speed and agility.
And that style connected with the crowd.
Instantly. He hit a crossbody early, then this really cool spinning head scissors takeover that sent Dominik flying into the ring.
Taking the fight outside right away.
Yeah, and Octagón Jr. kept the pressure on. He hit an Asai moonsault to the floor, you know, the one where they bounce off the ropes backwards.
He doesn't move.
Looks great, apparently. Yeah. His aerial game was on point.
Sounds like a highlight reel just waiting to happen. What other specific moves did the sources mention for Octagón Jr.?
Oh, a whole bunch. Thrust kicks to the body, the tornillo, that corkscrew move. He hit an enziguri from the apron twice. A flying corkscrew arm drag. A super kick. He hit a twisting splash out of the corner for a 2 count. Also a slingshot corkscrew splash, again for 2.
Really putting the pressure on getting near falls.
Definitely.
That's an incredible amount of offense packed into less than 5 minutes.
It really showcases his lucha style. Commentary kept saying he looked great, calling him that blur. They said he had the crowd eating out of the palm of his hand.
And commentary was surprised by the crowd reaction.
One commentator mentioned it, yeah. Felt like sometimes the WWE crowd needs more introduction to new guys, but Octagón Jr.'s talent just immediately won them over, which is a huge credit to him.
Absolutely. So Octagón Jr. is flying around, looking amazing, crowds behind him. How does Dirty Dom counter this? What were his tactics?
Pure heel tactics. Classic Dominik. He managed to roll Octagón Jr. back in after one dive. Then he used that old school spot, crotched him on the top rope.
Ouch. Always effective.
And then he did something really disrespectful. While Octagón Jr. was stuck there, Dominik tied his mask to the bottom rope.
Tied his mask. You said how important the mask is. That's a major insult in Lucha Libre.
Huge insult. Tampering with the mask like that is designed purely to get heat, to disrespect the tradition. And while Octagón Jr. was tangled, Dominik apparently stomped on his head and chest.
Adding injury to insult. Literally.
Exactly. And he wasn't done showing off. He posed for the booze, then threw his towel or shirt or something right at the AAA group sitting at ringside.
Targeting Octagón Jr.'s allies, too. Just trying to provoke everything.
Total provocation. Once he had control, he slowed it down. Ground and pound attack. Sent Octagón Jr. to the corner.
Did he try any of his dad's moves?
He tried the Three Amigos, yeah. But Octagón Jr. blocked it, showed some fight. Dominik did hit the Michinoku driver for a 2 count.
Octagón Jr. kicked out.
He did. So Dominik went back to basics, drop-kicked Octagón Jr. onto the middle rope, setting up his own finish.
The 619?
Yep, he went for it. But Octagón Jr. dodged the first attempt. One commentator apparently called it the slowest-looking 619.
Even the commentary noticed.
They did, and right after that miss, Liv Morgan gets involved.
The classic ringside interference.
She jumped up on the apron, created a distraction for Octagón Jr. just for a second.
But a second is all it takes.
Exactly. Dominik capitalized, hit that drop kick to the ropes again, this time setting it up perfectly.
And then the 619 connected.
It did. Sent Octagón Jr. reeling. Dominik went straight up top.
Frog splash.
Hit the frog splash, covered him. 1, 2, 3.
And that was it. Dominik retains the title.
Dominik Mysterio gets the win via pinfall.
Yeah.
Retains the Intercontinental Championship.
All thanks to some heel tactics and that crucial distraction. And the official time again.
4 minutes and 55 seconds.
4 minutes, 55 seconds. Wow.
Huh?
That is really short for a title match on a PLE.
It is. And yeah, that length, or lack thereof, was a big topic in the post-match analysis from the sources.
Let's get into that. What were the different takes on the match quality, given how short it was?
It was definitely mixed. Some felt, solid match, considering the circumstances. Impromptu, short notice.
But others were less impressed.
Yeah, quite a few felt it was just too short, that it didn't really get out of any kind of gear. Basically, it didn't have time to build into anything significant.
Didn't add much to the show overall.
That was the feeling from some analysis, that it would have benefited from being a little bit longer, especially to let Octagón Jr. shine more.
So the context really hurt his perception.
Pretty much. One take was basically, look, it was about as good as you could hope for, under 5 minutes, announced 3 hours beforehand, acknowledging the limitations.
And did it succeed as a showcase for AAA?
One comment specifically said it probably didn't do much to entice people into watching AAA, suggesting it needed more time to really sell that style and talent to the WWE audience.
Okay, so mixed feelings on the match as a whole, largely due to the time constraint. But what about Octagón Jr. individually? How did he come across?
Overwhelmingly positive on that front. Everyone seemed to agree he looked great, praised his speed. That blur from the word go description came up again.
High praise.
Yeah, one commentator even said it was an honor just to be in the building watching him. So despite the short match, he clearly made a fantastic impression.
That's great to hear. And Dominik, how was his role perceived?
He was seen as the perfect foil for a luchador like Octagón Jr. His character work, insisting he's the best, disrespecting the tradition, it just works.
He plays that part well.
And commentary noted he's gotten better at bridging that gap between American and lucha styles. Called it actually impressive, considering his earlier struggles.
So, acknowledging his improvement as a performer, even while playing the villain.
Right. One commentator, even jokingly or maybe hyperbolically, called him the greatest intercontinental champion of all time, just leaning into the heel persona.
And the finish with Liv Morgan.
Commentary highlighted that as Dominik doing what he does best, using the distraction, hitting his moves, and basically teaching AAA and Octagón Jr. a little lesson in how Dirty Dom handles business.
Reinforces his character. Wins by any means necessary.
Exactly. It ties it all together.
All right, let's bring in Dave Meltzer's take on this match. First off, the rating Meltzer gave it.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly glowing.
No, not at all. Came in at 2 stars. In his system, well, that basically means it wasn't seen as a particularly strong match. Not much impact.
Right. And the main critique, it seemed like it went beyond just, the moves in the ring. He seemed focused on the why.
He was, yeah. A big point was just, what was the purpose of this match? Like in wrestling, ideally every match pushes a story forward or builds a character or achieves something. And saying it lacked purpose, that's a pretty big knock. It suggests that the match just felt kind of aimless within the show.
He did mention the build-up, though, the pre-match angle on the AAA show.
Yeah.
There was context, right?
Yeah, he noted that. Doing an angle, a segment to build hype, on that earlier AAA Worlds Collide show, that was seen as a positive step. Good for anticipation for this crossover thing.
Okay.
But despite
the execution just didn't land, according to him, in a very specific way.
Exactly. The review flat out said the match basically told people that AAA is the minor leagues.
Ouch.
Yeah. Ouch is right. That's really harsh. And it makes you wonder, how promotions like AAA get presented when they work with a bigger stage like WWE.
So what was it about the match that made him feel that way? Was it detailed?
Not really beyond that overall lack of purpose thing. It suggests maybe the presentation or just the feel of the competition didn't seem equal. He also mentioned a specific in-ring detail, Octagón Jr.'s mask.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
Just noted that Octagón getting his mask tied in the ropes, it's actually like a pretty common spot for Octagón Jr. It's a small thing maybe, but if you watch a lot, you notice it. Maybe signals it's a bit repetitive.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting and kind of goes against the grain for Dominik. Meltzer pointed out the fans were actually cheering Dominik.
Yeah, that observation it's fascinating, isn't it? Because Dominik, he's top heel stuff in WWE, always gets booed massively. So for him to get cheers here, it just cuts completely against that. It suggests the live crowd in that moment had a totally different vibe. Maybe they just found him entertaining, even if the match itself got critiqued.
It adds this whole other layer, doesn't it, to how you understand a wrestling show. It's not just the expert review, not just the planned story, but that live crowd element, always unpredictable.
Absolutely.
Any immediate follow-up shown after the match?
Just Dominik and Liv hitting the win, soaking up the booze. But one source did mention a backstage bit later with Dominik.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
He apparently acknowledged that things didn't go my way today at Worlds Collide.
Interesting. So even though he won at Money in the Bank, he's admitting the earlier brawl maybe wasn't ideal for him.
Seems like it. Maybe the brawl got out of hand, or he didn't come out looking as dominant as he wanted, so the win later was maybe more important for him to regain control of his narrative.
And you said that backstage segment leads us into the other big theme.
Yes. That whole idea of how business gets handled and backstage scheming brings us right to the topic that the sources just could not stop discussing, the product placement.
Ah, yes. The sponsorships. You said it was everywhere.
It felt like it reading these reports. It wasn't just background noise. It was front and center. And that Chad Gable segment you mentioned earlier, perfect example.
But Gable, backstage with the Creed brothers, planning for the ladder match.
Exactly. He's scheming to help his buddy, El Grande Americano, who is actually Gable himself in a lucha mask, right?
Part of his character gimmick?
And his plan involves using, wait for it, the official Fireball Money in the Bank ladder.
The official ladder. Sponsored by Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
You got it! They showed a bright red ladder, Fireball logos plastered all over it. Commentary immediately jumped on it, calling Fireball the official shot of bad guys.
Wow. Branding the actual object they use in the match.
Directly. And it wasn't just the visual. Gable tells the Creeds, put this thing under the ring somewhere where Grande can find it. Comprende.
Setting up a spot for later in the match.
But then he adds, make sure you tell me too, which got a laugh. And there was even a bit where one of the Creeds didn't know what Fireball was, and Gable had to explain, it's cinnamon whiskey.
So the dialogue, the humor, it's all revolving around the sponsored ladder.
Completely. Commentary had fun with it too. Look at that thing. What is Fireball, though? And then the explanation. They called it blatant product placement.
Did they question how easy it would be to find under the ring?
Yeah, one commentator joked about that. Like, how hard could it be to find the bright red whiskey ladder if you know where it is?
Okay, so the Fireball ladder is a very memorable, almost absurd example. But it wasn't the only one, right?
Oh, not by a long shot. The sources pointed to the Cash App logo being right there on the Money in the Bank briefcases. The prize itself was branded.
The thing they're all fighting for has a sponsor logo.
Yep. And they also ran a full Cash App ad during the show with Big E and Jey Uso talking about getting paid early, savings, all that.
Standard commercial, but reinforcing the partnership.
And they mentioned past examples, too, like the Slim Jim table from another event. Same idea, branding the objects used in the spots.
So briefcases, ladders, tables, plus the usual ads.
Yeah.
It really was pervasive.
It led to this whole commentary discussion about it. The feeling was there isn't anything that this company will not brand, just a sense of inevitability, maybe?
And they started brainstorming other possibilities.
They did. Kind of jokingly, but maybe not entirely. Sponsored steel chairs, kendo sticks, fire extinguishers.
Common wrestling props.
Even the ring bell. Joked it could be the Blue Chew bell.
Oh my God.
Barbed wire came up. How do you brand barbed wire? Give Mark Shapiro an hour, was the response.
Mark Shapiro, the TKO president, implying he'd figure it out.
Yeah. A Home Depot sledgehammer for Triple H was another one.
Taking wrestler-specific items and imagining sponsors.
And a really specific one. Speculating Shapiro might want Mr. Iguana for a Geico ad, maybe on the iguana itself.
It's niche. But it shows how far their minds were going. Anything could be branded.
Exactly. They compared it to UFC, which has a lot of branding, but especially to Formula One.
F1 cars are covered in logos.
Right. Any little space they can fit a logo onto something, they will jam that logo in. That was the comparison. WWE seems to be pushing those boundaries now.
But there was an interesting point about why it might work, or at least feel less jarring, in wrestling specifically.
Yeah, that was a fascinating bit of analysis. The idea that wrestling's inherent corniness, its theatrical nature, might make it an easier digestible place for this kind of thing.
How so?
Because it's already a spectacle, maybe the over-the-top branding just fits in. Like the Fireball ladder, the reaction isn't outrage. It's more like, oh, look at that crazy thing. What is it? Oh, cinnamon whiskey. It almost becomes part of the show's fabric.
So the line between performance and advertisement gets blurrier, but maybe in a way that feels okay within the wrestling world.
That was the argument presented. But it definitely sparked debate among the commentators themselves.
About their own role in this.
Yeah. One felt like they were being asked to review ads, basically. That the entire product just feels like it's one giant commercial.
A sense of being overwhelmed by it?
Maybe. That same person felt like they were losing the battle with consumerism, but the counter was also strong. We have no way around it.
They have to describe what's happening.
Exactly. If there's a fireball ladder, you talk about the fireball ladder, it's the factual reality.
Understandable. Was there any defense of the practice?
There was an acknowledgement, not faulting them for trying to pay the bills, like TV shows have commercials, but still that hesitation. There's a point at which suggesting maybe it could go too far, even if they don't know where that point is.
The tension between business reality and artistic or journalistic integrity, maybe.
Something like that. But there was also a positive spin offered, framing it as proof of concept. WWE showing what they can do under TKO, putting logos on favorite inanimate objects, and noting that despite online negativity about these ideas beforehand...
Like rumors of sponsored gear?
Exactly. The observation was that in execution at the live event, seeing the branded ladder or briefcase, there were no complaints at all from the crowd.
Interesting. So the online backlash doesn't always match the live reaction.
Apparently not in this case. They also brought up Meltzer, speculating about logos on tights becoming common, and that Brock Lesnar already did it. So this Money in the Bank event felt like maybe the next big step in that direction.
It really sounds like the sponsorships were a major narrative thread running through the whole event coverage.
Unavoidable, based on these sources.
Okay, so beyond the match and the branding, what other bits and pieces from the event did the sources highlight, just to round out the picture?
Well, there were the usual ads for upcoming WWE stuff, very important for business.
Like what?
Fanatics Fest NYC was plugged, that big fan convention, and a whole series of events in Atlanta for July.
Multiple shows in one city.
Yeah, NXT Great American Bash, a Saturday night's main event, and the all-women's PLE Evolution on July 13th. Big push for Atlanta.
And tied to that, they promoted premium packages.
Yep. On location, the official hospitality partner showed aerial shots near the stadium in Atlanta, encouraging fans to buy those upgraded experiences. Another revenue stream.
Makes sense. Do they include any non-wrestling, non-business segments? Community stuff?
They did. There was a segment about the Los Angeles wildfires from back in January.
Oh, right. Those were devastating.
Yeah. The sources mentioned the destruction, homes lost, businesses, even fatalities. A very serious real-world issue.
And WWE highlighted as a specific family.
The Thomas family, Barbara Thomas and her 4 sons, lost their home and school. They were guests at the show, met on the Countdown show earlier. WWE positioned it as part of their support efforts for families affected.
That's a nice touch, bringing the community into the event.
And there was that specific anecdote about LA Knight on the pre-show.
What happened there?
He gave the family a replica WWE title belt. Asked one of the boys, his favorite wrestler kid, says CM Punk.
Uh-huh. Not LA Knight.
Nope. But Knight, being smooth, promised to get official CM Punk plates put on the belt for him. A cool, genuine moment.
That is pretty cool. Any other big sponsorships mentioned?
Just DraftKings getting a plug, presented in part by Money in the Bank, urging people to download the app, use the code WWE for a free pool, chance to win prizes.
Tapping into that sports betting fantasy sports market.
Another common partnership these days. Today, we're zeroing in, really getting into the weeds on one specific, really electrifying moment from the world of wrestling.
Yeah, we're talking about that intense Women's Intercontinental Championship match. Becky Lynch versus Lyra Valkyria at Money in the Bank 2025.
Exactly. So setting the stage a bit more, this match wasn't just tucked away somewhere on the card. It was the second Intercontinental title match of the night.
Right. Big spot.
And it went down in Los Angeles at the Intuit Dome. Packed house, too. The sources made a point of saying 17,374 fans were there. Sold out.
And, that kind of crowd just amps up the pressure, especially for a match that already had so much personal baggage attached.
Okay, let's get into that baggage, that history. Because the source material is crystal clear. There is some serious bad blood here, even though, apparently, they weren't always enemies.
Oh, absolutely. The material paints this really complex picture. One source had a great line for it, said they were good friends, better enemies.
Wow, yeah, that kind of says it all, doesn't it? Captures that whole dynamic shift.
It really does. And the sources trace this back quite a way. Their paths first crossed in a big way back in NXT.
Right. Lyra actually beat Becky Lynch for the NXT Women's title. That was Halloween Havoc 2023.
A huge moment for Lyra. Beating the man like that really put her on the map.
For sure. But the more recent stuff, the stuff that really led to this match, that started pretty recently, didn't it?
It did. The sources tell us, despite that NXT history, they actually teamed up. And they won big the women's tag team titles at WrestleMania 41.
Which honestly makes what the sources say happened next even more shocking. It was the absolute turning point.
What was that?
They lost the titles the very next night on Raw to Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez.
Okay.
And immediately, like right after the loss, the material is blunt. Becky Lynch turned her back on Lyra. And one source pretty graphically says she beat the hell out of her.
Oof. So that's the betrayal. That's the spark that lit this fire again, but way hotter this time.
Totally. And it led directly to them facing off at Backlash just last month for Lyra's Women's Intercontinental Championship.
And Lyra kept the title at Backlash, right? The sources mentioned that.
Yeah, she retained. But interestingly, it was described as a very quick pin out of nowhere, a roll-up specifically after what was apparently a tough matchup till then. Not exactly dominant.
Clever. Opportunistic, maybe. But the aggression didn't stop there, according to the sources.
No, it didn't. Just like after the tag title loss, Becky attacked Lyra after the Backlash match ended too.
So it's a pattern. Losing, then attacking after the bell. That adds a whole other layer of disrespect.
Definitely fueled the fire. And it got worse leading up to Money in the Bank. Sources say Lyra interfered in one of Becky's qualifying matches for the Money in the Bank ladder match.
Payback. Costing her a shot at the briefcase.
Exactly, prevented Becky from getting in. And that really brought things to a head, leading straight into this championship match with all its history.
So with all that backstory, the stakes for this Money in the Bank match, man, they were sky high. And it wasn't just about the belt.
Not at all. Lyra, according to the sources, made it clear this was personal now because of that post-match attack at Backlash.
Right. But Becky came back with a challenge that had some really specific, really intense terms. The sources laid these out pretty clearly.
Yeah, the stipulation for Becky was huge. If Lyra won this match, Becky could never challenge her for the women's IC title again, as long as Lyra held it.
That's massive for someone like Becky Lynch, basically saying, this is my last shot at you for this title.
But the flip side, the stipulation for Lyra if she lost, that was about pride.
What was it again?
She'd have to look Becky in the eyes and raise Becky's hand. Acknowledge her as the better woman, publicly.
Ouch. That's not just losing the title. That's a forced public concession. Humiliating.
And Lyra, the sources say, was full of confidence. She accepted, said she'd beaten Becky twice already.
Even got a little cocky, didn't she? Something about doing with her eyes closed last time.
Yeah, exactly. Said it was no problem to face Becky again under these terms. Really set the tone for her mindset going in.
Okay, so let's jump in. The source kind of throws us right in, doesn't it? Mentions entrances starting, and the first one it highlights is Becky Lynch.
Right, and then immediately there's this really striking visual detail. She's described as wearing a red fur coat.
Yeah, just pause on that image for a second. That's not just an outfit.
No, it's definitely making a statement.
And Michael Cole makes a joke that Becky doesn't realize it's 100 degrees in here.
Okay. Wow, yeah.
And the commentary team, they did a great job setting this stage too.
How so?
Well, they hammered home the no love loss angle. One's sisters now turned bitter enemies, that kind of thing.
Yeah, building the drama.
They asked if lightning would strike twice, could Lyra beat Becky a third time? And they framed it as Becky's quest for the gold she'd never won, the IC title. An outlier on her resume.
Good point. And they also gave context on Lyra's reign, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pointed out she was the first ever women's IC champ, held it for 140 days at that point. And this was her 6th title defense. That's a solid run.
Yeah, especially for someone relatively new to the main roster title scene.
And one source really highlighted this stat the commentators brought up. Becky was 0-5 in her last 5 title matches overall.
Ouch. That's not a great stat heading into a big match.
Right. And it led some commentators to basically predict the outcome based on that alone.
It's funny how stats like that can shape the narrative, even with all the personal drama involved.
Definitely adds another layer of pressure on Becky.
Okay, so let's dive into the match itself, because this is where it gets really interesting. The sources all agree. It started incredibly aggressively, like 0 to 60 instantly.
Yeah, you could feel that animosity right away. No feeling out process. The fight actually started before the bell.
Becky takes a swipe first, so maybe it was mutual aggression, like they just couldn't wait.
Could be. Either way, instant chaos. And Lyra definitely got the early advantage, sending Becky crashing outside.
And it was right then, early on, outside the ring, that the sources mentioned this potential wardrobe issue for Lyra.
Oh, yeah, the near wardrobe malfunction. One source said the ref even had to help her for a second.
And they compared it to something similar happening at the Rumble, didn't they? With Liv Morgan helping her then.
Exactly. And the commentators, naturally, had a bit of fun with it, joking she might need a zip tie or a new outfit. A weird little moment in the middle of the chaos.
But Becky, ever the veteran, used that outside environment pretty quickly. Blocked a rope dive drop kick from Lyra,
Right.
and then just slammed her hard onto the floor.
And that slam, it had immediate consequences. Becky's got sharp eyes. The sources say Lyra started clutching her left elbow right after that landing.
Landed awkwardly.
Yep. And Becky immediately saw it and started targeting that elbow. Classic smart wrestling. Exploit the weakness.
So Becky rolls her back in, presses the advantage, hits a flying forearm, then the exploder suplex, but only gets a 2 count.
And the commentary team, watching this, they picked up on Becky's strategy right away. Called it her game plan, attack early, establish control, punish that arm.
One commentator even called it a Hall of Famers level game plan. High praise.
Definitely. And Becky wasn't just hitting moves. Sources say she was talking smack, slapping Lyra, punching her back, knee on the neck, couple of uppercuts, trying to get in her head too.
Physically and mentally breaking her down.
Yeah. But there was this interesting debate on commentary, captured in the sources, about why Becky was so intense.
What were the takes?
Some felt it smells of desperation, called her a bit desperate. Maybe because of that 0-5 title match stat we mentioned.
Okay, like she felt the pressure.
Yeah, or maybe that Lyra's confidence was getting to her, taking her out of her game, forcing her to be overly aggressive.
But there was another view.
Right. Others saw it as just game day Becky Lynch, making a statement. Acknowledging that Lyra had grown so much, Becky needed that intensity to beat this different Lyra Valkyria.
So desperation or determination. Depends on who you ask, I guess.
Pretty much. But either way, the sources agree. After Lyra's initial burst outside that early part of the match, Becky Lynch was dominating thus far. She was in control.
Okay, so the match moves on. And the reports, the notes, they describe this real back-and-forth battle. Lots of specific moves, counters, exchanges. It sounds like it kept the crowd hooked.
Oh, absolutely. This is where you see the technical skill, the athleticism shine through. Both of them dug deep. Multiple sources made a point of highlighting that.
And right away, even after that initial flurry, they were countering each other's big moves. Shows how well they knew each other.
Yeah, Becky went for the manhandle slam early, but Lyra saw it coming, rolled through for a 2 count. Quick escape.
And then Lyra immediately tried for her finish, the Nightwing. But Becky was ready, countered that into the slop drop for her own 2 count.
Commentary pointed that out, didn't they? Both trying for the home run early, but both blocking it. High stakes, high awareness.
After that exchange, Becky seemed to get back in control for a bit, wore Lyra down more.
What did she do?
2 running leg drops, got a 2 count, hit some really loud knife edge chops, and then just slammed Lyra's head on the turnbuckle pad over and over. Really focused attack.
But Lyra's tough. She fired back. Sources describe her comeback starting with forearm shivers. Becky tried to counter an Irish whip, kicked her gut, but Lyra blocked a butterfly suplex attempt.
And then Lyra unleashed her own sequence. Big momentum shift.
What was in that sequence?
The swinging neck breaker, 2 clotheslines, her signature combo offense, then a step up in Zugiri.
Nice.
And capped it off with the Dr. Bomb, that big sit-out power bomb. Got a 2 count, and the sources say Lyra was really firing up here, finding her groove.
We also saw some quick technical stuff mid-match, right? Not just power moves.
Yeah, a fast roll-up exchange, and Becky hit a clever tip-up maneuver. Showed they could battle on the mat with transitions and pins, too.
Now, there was one move that really stood out in the reports and commentary. Becky's DDT.
Oh, yeah, that one got a lot of attention. She hit it clean for a 2 count, but the way commentary described it.
Vicious. They said Becky spikes her with it. One source had commentary saying it felt like every disc in the neck just got compressed. Described the impact right on the top of the cranium. Said Lyra looked like a mess.
But then, contrastingly, another commentator apparently praised the execution, calling it unmatched finesse from Becky Lynch. So brutal but skillful.
It sounds like it. Clearly a move that made an impression. Then Lyra drags Becky to the corner, goes for the moonsault.
But Becky moves. Veteran move.
But Lyra landed on her feet, right?
Yeah.
And hit that quick head kick or spinning heel kick. Turned Becky inside out, as one source put it. Incredible agility from Lyra.
Then we got into some submission battles. Lyra went for the Nightwing again.
Becky counters into a butterfly suplex.
And one source specifically linked that suplex to Becky setting up an armbar.
Right, the cross arm breaker. Targeting that arm that was hurt earlier. Smart callback.
But Lyra countered the submission, rolled Becky into a pin. Multiple sources highlighted that pinning counter as a key part of Lyra's game.
Very intelligent wrestling. And then Lyra applied her own submissions.
Yeah, first a single leg crab, then transitioned into a modified ankle lock.
And the description of that was pretty unique, wasn't it? A modified half Boston crab with her foot on Becky's neck.
Exactly. Commentators loved it, called it unconventional, innovative, a technical masterclass. Becky had to scramble to the ropes to break that one.
Just relentless pressure from both.
The fight spilled outside again after that, didn't it?
Yep.
Lyra hit a wrecking ball dropkick.
Sources mentioned a dive, yeah.
Yeah.
Becky fired back with an elbow to the gut, but Lyra kicked her repeatedly in the chest. Then she draped Becky over the barricade.
Setting up that huge spot, the peripeteer.
Right, described as a diving leg drop or guillotine leg drop. Lyra came off the announce table or the timekeeper's barricade.
Right onto the back of Becky's neck while she was stretched over the barricade. So dangerous.
And one source added that detail about Lyra landing hard on her own tailbone during it, but just shrugging it off. Incredible focus.
Back inside, another major sequence. Becky avoided a dive from Lyra.
Catches her midair.
And hits a powerbomb. Huge near fall there, a 2 count. Commentators apparently thought that might be it, saying Becky caught her, stacked her up.
Doesn't have gotten a huge reaction. Man, this match wasn't just move after move. It built drama. Those near falls sounded incredible, had everyone guessing.
Absolutely. The sources really emphasize how well-timed and crafted those moments were. They pulled you in, created genuine doubt about who was going to win. Every pin felt like the pin.
Like that powerbomb counter we mentioned earlier. Lyra dives, Becky catches her midair, boom, powerbomb, 2 count. Commentators freaking out, that's a huge near fall.
Definitely. And then the big one, the avalanche manhandle slam sequence.
Right. Becky goes up top, Lyra cuts her off, gets Becky on her shoulders. Looks like maybe an avalanche Samoan drop attempt.
But Becky fights out, hits elbows, and then delivers the avalanche manhandle slam.
Though the sources clarified it wasn't from the very top rope, right? More like the middle rope.
Yeah, middle rope or off the middle turnbuckle. But still, commentary called it Becky's ultimate nuclear weapon, a Superman handle slam.
And Lyra kicked out.
Lyra kicked out. Becky's reaction, according to the sources, was just pure disbelief. Becky can't believe it.
Commentators were stunned too. Said Lyra was more than equal to it. Showed incredible toughness. Multiple sources flagged that as a big near fall. Huge moment.
Everyone held their breath on that pin attempt.
And it wasn't just those specific spots. The sources generally said the match was full of close calls. Lyra kicking out at 2.5, Becky barely kicking out herself at times. The consensus was clear. The near falls were expertly crafted. Kept you on the edge of your seat.
Okay, so speaking of edge of your seat drama, there was that moment, highlighted across multiple sources, where the match spilled outside again, leading to that really tense double countout sequence.
Oh, yeah. That sequence really showed how intense things were, how far they'd push it, even risking a non-finish, which nobody wanted.
This was right after the avalanche manhandle slam near fall, right? Yeah. They just spilled outside immediately.
Yep. And Becky, maybe frustrated Lyra kicked out, just drives her back first into the steel ring post. Brutal.
And then adds insult to injury, hits another manhandle slam, but this time on the concrete floor.
Devastating, especially after everything they had already been through.
Then Becky does something smart, the veteran move commentators noted. Rolls back into the ring herself.
Resets the rest count, buys herself a second. Wise move.
But it backfired. Because when she rolled back out to get Lyra...
Wham! Lyra hits her finisher, the Nightwing, right there on the floor.
So now both women are down outside, having hit finishers on each other on the unforgiving floor.
And the ref, Jessica Cart, starts the 10 count. Both are just out. Sources describe them as being in comas, basically.
Until the count got really high, 9, maybe even 9.5.
Right at the last second. Both suddenly came alive. And the sources say they sprinted back into the ring simultaneously, just barely beat the count. Incredible resilience.
And the commentary during this, apparently it was pure chaos and relief.
Yeah, first panic about a double count out. Maybe a double count out here. Double count out means Lyra keeps the championship.
Then relief when they made it. Thank God. A double count out would have solved absolutely nothing. Thankfully, this match lives on.
And they immediately talked about the stipulations, right? How a double count out would negate everything. Becky's hand not raised, her never challenge again clause.
Exactly. They stressed the need for a conclusion tonight. Everyone was invested, especially with those personal stakes.
That whole sequence sounds like a masterclass in building tension. Show their limits, but also their absolute refusal to quit. They had to finish it in the ring.
So they survived the countout, they survived the near falls. How did this incredibly hard-fought battle finally end?
Okay, this is where the controversy, which was a huge point in all the sources, really comes in. The finish gave us a winner, but let's just say the tactics were questionable.
How did it go down? They get back in the ring after beating the count.
And fueled by pure adrenaline, they just start trading strikes immediately. Forearms, palm strikes, just slugging it out. No quit in either of them. Becky managed to stop Lyra going for the Nightwing during this.
Then a series of quick roll-ups, trying for that sudden finish.
Exactly. Standard late match stuff when you're exhausted.
Becky sends Lyra face first into the middle rope, sets something up maybe.
Looked like she was going for one last manhandle slam, the decisive one.
But Lyra countered it, rolled Becky over for a 2 count. Even exhausted, she knew how to counter Becky's finish. Amazing.
And then, the moment. Right after that counter, Becky rolls Lyra over.
With a handful of tights.
Yep, or grabbing the tights or a hand on the tights. All the sources were consistent on that specific detail. Becky used the tights for leverage to get the pin.
And that was it. 3 count.
3 count. Becky Lynch wins. The match time, according to 2 sources, was 15 minutes and 20 seconds.
A solid length for that kind of intensity, but the real story was the finish itself and how commentary reacted.
Oh, instantly. Multiple commentators saw it and called it out immediately. Announcer immediately called this one out. Becky Lynch clearly had pulled the tights. Becky's got the tights. Hand on the tights, for sure.
But not everyone saw it or admitted to seeing it.
Right, there was that little debate. Michael saw it clearly. Wade played dumb. I don't know what you're talking about.
Huh, classic.
And one source even had commentary comparing it to another controversial finish, the Mercedes Athena finish, saying maybe the first angle looked like just leverage near the backside, but other angles confirmed it was the tights.
So some saw it clearly, called it out, but the ref didn't catch it. The win stands. Becky Lynch is the new Women's Intercontinental Champion via controversial means.
Yep. End of the match. But not the end of the interaction.
Right, because of those stipulations they agreed on beforehand. Becky wins, but Lyra had obligations.
And this post-match stuff, detailed really well in the sources, just adds another layer, a really uncomfortable layer, arguably.
So first stipulation, Lyra loses. She has to raise Becky's hand, acknowledge her as better. Did she do it?
She did. The sources say she did it begrudgingly or reluctantly, but she upheld her end. Commentators called it true sport, even though she clearly hated it.
Okay, so far so good. Stipulation met.
But Becky wasn't done. Having won with the tights grab, she apparently wasn't satisfied with just the one reluctant hand raise.
What did she do?
Sources say Becky told Lyra she must do it for all 4 sides of the ring. Demanded she repeat the acknowledgement in every corner. Seriously.
Yeah.
For winning like that, that seems excessive.
Commentary thought so too, mostly. Reaction was negative. Come on, why do this? Called it a public display of humiliation. Said Becky was making Lyra know her place.
Did they think that was part of the deal? Going to all 4 sides?
One commentator questioned it, but another insisted it was always in the details, pushing Lyra to do it with gusto, do it like you mean it, just really rubbing it in. Lyra, stuck, begrudgingly obliges.
Man, that's rough to watch, probably. So Lyra goes around the ring, tries to leave, but Becky stops her again, according to one source, and adds another demand. What now?
Becky demands Lyra strap the title around her waist.
Okay, was that part of the deal?
Commentators didn't seem to think so. I don't know if they talked about that. It sounded like Becky just adding humiliation on top of humiliation.
One commentator summed it up pretty harshly, right?
Yeah. She cheats to win. Then she's got to put on this public display of humiliation. Pretty damning take on Becky's actions.
So Lyra puts the belt on Becky,
straps it around her waist, fulfills that final, maybe unagreed upon demand. But the second she does...
Payback time.
Lyra immediately hits a German suplex, just snaps.
Wow, didn't see that coming after all the compliance.
Followed it right up with the Nightwing, laid Becky out. Then, according to the sources, she stormed off or then left, got her payback.
How did commentary react to that, Lyra finally fighting back?
It was mixed. One felt Becky deserved that, arguing Lyra lived up to her part of the bargain and then some, so the attack was justified. Okay, I can see that.
But another called Lyra a sore loser. And one had a really interesting take. They thought the attack looked ridiculous because Lyra went along with all the humiliating demands first. Felt it undercut the impact.
Huh. That's a different perspective. So a really complex, debated ending to the whole segment leaves you wondering about the message.
Definitely. Lots of layers there.
Okay, so moving beyond just the sequence of events, the source material we have is rich with commentary and analysis. Gives us insights into how the match was perceived, the performances, and where things might go next. And first off, the overall match quality. Sounds like it got rave reviews.
Universally positive, yeah. Hell of a match, excellent match, incredible match tonight. Phrases like that pop up repeatedly.
One commentator apparently said it was miles above the main event on the show. That's a pretty bold statement.
It is. Shows how highly they rated this specific contest. Another thought it was clearly better than their Backlash match, and one of the best of the whole night, right up there with the men's Money in the Bank match.
Though they did add a little qualifier, didn't they? Something about another match.
Right. That specific comparison saying neither this nor the men's MITB was better than Gable versus Vikingo from Worlds Collide. Adds a bit of personal taste context. But another source just flat out said they had their most enjoyment watching this match on the show. High praise for entertainment value.
And a big reason for that quality, according to the sources, was the chemistry between Becky and Lyra.
Definitely. Commentators kept saying they work great together, have great chemistry, excellent chemistry. That connection clearly allowed them to have such a dynamic match.
They also talked a lot about performance and growth, especially Lyra's.
Yeah, tons of praise for her, how much she's grown, her confidence now, how she handles the spotlight, just flat out getting better.
They mentioned her being everywhere in the media, too, like interviews and stuff.
Right, it mentioned Metro UK, Muscle and Fitness, suggesting her profile is really rising.
Yeah.
Called her an outstanding in-ring technician, too.
And there was that specific point about Backlash.
Yeah, the idea that Becky maybe took Lyra too lightly back then. Didn't realize how much Valkyria has grown and developed over the past 6 months.
So this match showed a different Lyra Valkyria, more dangerous, more ready.
That was the commentary consensus, yeah. She really stepped up.
What about Becky's side? Her performance and status?
Acknowledge her legacy, of course. Trailblazer, 7-time world champion. Someone always aiming to get back there again, meaning the very top.
And this IC title was framed as a big deal for her.
Yeah, a big opportunity tonight to add that missing piece to her collection. They discussed her desperation, sure, but also her ability to adapt her game plan from Backlash. Showed her level, her elite thinking.
And that controversial finish, the tights grab. Commentary was definitely divided, or at least debated it openly.
Oh, yeah. The sources made it clear. Some saw it plain as day, called it out. One commentator tried to deny it. Really reflected the controversial nature of how Becky won.
Let's see what Dave Meltzer's analysis of this match was.
Okay, so let's get into it. First thing in the notes, the rating. 3.5 stars. Now, for this reviewer, 3.5 is, well, it's pretty good, isn't it? Generally seen as very good.
That's right, yeah. Solidly good, well-worked, enjoyable match, but maybe, not quite reaching that top tier.
Okay, and what's interesting, the first actual note mentioned, even before things really kick off, dueling chants.
Yeah.
Right at the start.
Tells you something about the crowd immediately. Oh, definitely. Shows they were invested, right from the jump. Both wrestlers had loud support. That's always good for the atmosphere. Sets a nice stage.
Okay, but then the notes get critical. There's this specific moment highlighted.
Right.
During a double countout spot, it says Becky Lynch was like, slow getting back in the ring.
And the note says the consequence was the referee had to kind of visibly hold up the count.
Yeah.
And it specifically says this looked bad.
Okay, let's pause on that. Looked bad. Why does a ref holding up a count? Why does that technically look bad in wrestling terms?
Well, wrestling works best when it feels, kind of real within its own rules, flows well. A count out is supposed to have this rhythm, right? 1, 2, 3, up to 10. If someone isn't where they need to be to break that count naturally, and the ref has to obviously, hesitate or slow down.
Yeah.
It just breaks the illusion. It kind of shines a light on the choreography and makes it feel maybe a bit clunky or, like a mistake.
Right. It pulls you out of it because you see the mechanics, the seams are showing a bit, a timing issue wasn't hidden.
Exactly. And for someone reviewing based on execution, pacing, a moment like that, it just stands out. It's a flaw, disrupts the match's rhythm.
Gotcha. But even with that specific criticism, the overall vibe from the notes is still very good match.
Yep, that's the overall assessment.
And this seems key. The notes make a point of saying it was not at the same level as their Backlash match. That one was called something special.
Yeah, and that comparison is really important, isn't it? It tells us, okay, this Money in the Bank match, high quality, enjoyable, got the 3.5 stars.
Right.
But it just lacked whatever that extra spark was, the thing that made the Backlash one feel special to the reviewer.
So maybe that one moment, the ref holding the count, or perhaps other little execution things like it, that's the kind of detail that stops a very good match becoming something special.
Could be. Yeah, potentially. So looking ahead, the sources got into some speculation, didn't they? Based on the match and especially that post-match attack.
They did. Particularly about Lyra's future. One commentator felt that post-match German suplex in Nightwing, that felt like a blow-off, like Lyra getting her revenge, and maybe closing that chapter for now.
So maybe the feud is over.
That commentator seemed to think so, or at least hope so in a way. They questioned the point of an immediate rematch if Lyra wasn't going to win the belt back right away. Didn't want to see her lose to Becky again so soon. Suggested maybe Lyra should feud with someone else next.
Interesting. But others speculated about Becky's reign.
Yeah, one prediction was that Becky would carry the belt all the way to SummerSlam and beyond, hinting at a potentially long and significant reign for her with the IC title.
And then there was that really detailed alternative booking idea from one source.
Oh, right. Had two main ideas. First, maybe Becky defends against a returning Bayley at the Evolution PLE next month.
Okay, that's big. What was the second idea?
Hold off on Bayley's return. Instead, have Becky versus Lyra III, but make it a last woman standing match at Evolution. A definitive blow-off, like Becky-Charlotte at the first Evolution.
And in that scenario, Lyra wins the title back.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even with an assist from Bayley, setting up Becky versus Bayley for SummerSlam after the Lyra feud is truly settled.
Which option did that commentator prefer?
The second one. Felt it was cleaner storytelling wrap up Becky-Lyra properly before moving to Becky-Bayley. Acknowledged it meant Bayley fans wait, but liked the one-on-one focus over jumping straight to a triple threat, even though Triple H apparently loves those.
Fascinating to hear those potential paths being discussed right after the match, based purely on the sources.
It really is. Shows how one result can spin off so many possibilities.
And there were some other kind of random but interesting details captured in the sources too, right? Like that crowd chant.
Oh yeah, the "We Want Truth" chant during a quiet moment. It's exactly. Just a little slice of live TV reality making its way into the record.
The sources also gave us some broader context, stuff about the broadcast itself, the LA atmosphere, beyond just this one match.
Yeah, paints a bigger picture. They even threw in LA's wrestling history, 17 PLEs, 4 WrestleManias, 2, 7, 21, 39 specifically mentioned.
Plus, this was only the second WWE event ever at the Intuit Dome. First was Raw on Netflix debut in January, so still a new spot for them.
And LA means celebrities. Sources definitely noted Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker with their baby. "Holy hell, the stars are out," was the quote.
But they also mentioned Daniel Fishel, Topanga, and Jensen Karp being there but not getting camera time. Led to that commentary debate about fame levels compared to the Kardashians or Macaulay Culkin.
Little inside baseball stuff.
Okay.
And ads, of course. The sources detailed those too.
Like the Serums Escape spike drinks, Ultimate Refreshment, Rumble Punch, Slamming Blueberry, 10% ABV, they noted.
Yep. And the WWE 2K25 add 30% off deal, Jacob Fatu in the Bloodline Showcase mode narrated by Heyman.
Plus the ad for Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia on June 28th, hyping John Cena's return. Last great champion, one final time. Big build for that.
And that funny moment with the Mattel Money in the Bank ring toy.
Oh, yeah. Pat McAfee playing with it, trying to simulate LA Knight cashing in and breaking it, trying to get the briefcase off.
Adds a bit of unexpected color to the broadcast description. The men's Money in the Bank ladder match happened June 7th, 2025.
Just now, yeah.
So get ready. Big bumps, some really strange conspiracy theories.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
And a major, major family drama playing out right in front of everyone.
It's got all the elements. And Money in the Bank, I mean, it's always a huge deal on the calendar, isn't it?
For sure. 6 competitors, brutal ladder match.
All chasing that one briefcase, that contract hanging up there.
Guarantees a world championship shot. Anytime, any place, for up to a year.
Pure opportunity just dangling there.
And this one, this particular Money in the Bank, it had extra layers.
Like the anniversary.
Exactly, 29th anniversary of the very first one. And the sources made a point of this and went right back to LA.
Where it all started. WrestleMania 21, right.
Nice historical touch.
It is. And, you know, looking at the history, the stats you pulled from the sources are pretty eye-opening.
Lay them on us.
Okay, so across all the men's Money in the Bank matches ever, 179 different guys have been in it.
179. That is a lot of people who've tried.
It really is. But here's the kicker, the stat that really tells the story.
Okay.
Out of those 179, only 24 have actually won the briefcase.
24. That's it.
That's it. It works out to like a 13% success rate.
Wow. 13%. That just shows how incredibly hard it is to win that match itself.
Absolutely brutal odds just to get your hands on the contract.
But the cash-in part, that's where the odds flip, right? The sources mention that.
Massively. Because winning the match is rare, yeah, but cashing in successfully, much more likely.
Okay.
Your sources note, out of the 25 times the men's contract has been cashed in, 19 times the person won the title.
19 out of 25.
Yep. That's a 76% success rate for the cash in itself.
So win the match, super hard, cash it in, pretty good chance you walk out champion.
That's the dynamic. Win the lottery, then, you know, the odds are heavily in your favor for the big prize.
Definitely raises the stakes.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because the whole concept of the Money in the Bank match itself, that's where the unique stakes really kick in.
Absolutely. The sources really hammer this home, the usual rules. Forget them, they're out the window, no countouts, no disqualifications, you can't pin anyone, can't make them submit. None of that applies here.
Right. It's chaos. The only objective, the only way to win, is to climb a ladder that's set up in the ring and grab a briefcase hanging way up high, everyone for themselves.
And inside that briefcase, that's the real prize. It's a contract. Guarantees a championship match.
But here's the thing that makes it so powerful, and the sources keep pointing this out. You can cash that contract in anytime, any place. For a whole year. You don't need to climb the rankings or win a tournament. You just have the title shot waiting.
Exactly. It's like a golden ticket, almost unstoppable if you time it right.
Yeah.
Winning this one match, grabbing that briefcase, it can genuinely change your career, like completely alter your path in WWE.
So the stakes aren't just winning tonight. It's about grabbing that massive opportunity, that shortcut, right in the middle of all the mayhem. Okay, so let's look at the 6 guys fighting for that career-changing contract. It's a real mix.
Yeah, it is. And starting with someone who probably understands the power of that briefcase better than, well, maybe anyone else in this match. Seth freaking Rollins. Sources note he's got Paul Heyman, the WWE Hall of Famer, with him tonight.
And his history with this exact match type is, like, super important. He actually won the Money in the Bank contract way back in 2014.
And that win led directly to maybe the most famous cash-in ever. The sources talk about him cashing in at WrestleMania the next year. They call it the heist of the century. A moment so big it apparently changed the next decade in WWE. So that's the kind of weight he brings.
Wow. So he didn't just participate. He used it to shake up the entire company. But the sources also mentioned he hasn't exactly been making friends recently. Just last night on SmackDown, he apparently went after 3 other guys in this match. Penta, Andrade, and LA Knight.
Whoa, hang on. So right off the bat, you've got built-in conflict. You got to think those 3 might be looking for payback tonight, right? In this already chaotic match.
Exactly. And the sources add he also had some kind of major face-to-face confrontation with Solo Sikoa and his crew. So yeah, potential enemies coming from all sides before the match even starts.
Sounds like he's walking in with a massive target painted on his back.
Yeah.
But the sources also point out this interesting stat. Seth Rollins has more wins at the Money in the Bank event itself than anyone. 7 wins overall at this show. So even if it's not always this specific match, he knows how to win here.
7 wins at the event. That's pretty incredible consistency. But the sources also draw this really sharp contrast between how Rollins got here and another competitor. They mentioned Rollins had to, you know, scratch, claw, and grasp every opportunity to really work his way up from the bottom over years.
Which leads us perfectly to Penta from Mexico. The sources say he's just exploded onto the scene, captured the imagination of fans and people inside WWE incredibly quickly. They call him captivating. His whole vibe is an experience. The Penta experience, one commentator apparently called it.
So, completely different path from Rollins' long grind. Penta's rise sounds almost meteoric according to the sources. He qualified beating Chad Gable and Dragon Lee. Now, they do point out this is his first WWE ladder match, but they add he's been in plenty outside WWE.
Right, so the environment isn't totally alien, just this specific WWE version. And apparently Penta himself thinks he's the favorite. On the Countdown show, he supposedly said he believes he's got this because he was damn good in L.
Yeah, the commentary did not seem to buy that. One source quotes a commentator calling that belief absolutely insane, especially staring across the ring at someone like Rollins. And this is where that contrast comes up again.
They really highlight it. Someone like Penta, only 5 months into his career here at WWE, and he's already right there, on the precipice of the very top.
Interesting. So the sources aren't just listing facts. They're setting up this narrative tension between the veteran who climbed the mountain and the newcomer who seemingly got fast-tracked. They do acknowledge Penta's worldwide experience, traveled world, honing his skills, wrestled every country, but that difference in their WWE journeys is clearly a point being made.
Yeah, a very different arrival to this huge opportunity. Okay, next up, El Grande Americano. Sources say he's from the Gulf of America.
He got into this match by winning a big triple threat on Raw against CM Punk and AJ Styles. But this is where things get, well, kind of weird and intriguing according to the sources. They highlight some very specific details around him, almost like a conspiracy theory brewing.
Oh yeah, this definitely caused some debate in the commentary based on our sources.
So whether it's just a string of bizarre coincidences or something else, the sources are definitely flagging this strange connection between El Grande Americano and Chad Gable. It adds this layer of mystery around him, doesn't it?
Absolutely does. Okay, moving on. Andrade, also from Mexico. And the key thing the sources note about him, nobody really talking about him going into this match.
Interesting. With all the fireworks around Rollins, the mystery with El Grande Americano, the Penta buzz, Andrade is just kind of there, according to the commentary anyway.
And the sources actually suggest that might be his best strategy, being overlooked. That could be a good place to be in this kind of chaotic match. He can just fly under the radar, let the other guys beat each other up, and then maybe make his move when the time is right.
Smart. A win would still change your career, just like for everyone else, the sources remind us. And he earned a spot, beat Carmelo Hayes and Jacob Fatu to qualify. So maybe being the dark horse is exactly where Andrade wants to be.
Could be. Okay, next. Solo Sikoa from Las Vegas. Sources point out he's been on this stage before main event at the last 2 Money in the Bank events, but crucially, those were both tag team matches.
Ah, okay. So he knows the pressure of the event, the big stage feel, but this is his first ever Money in the Bank contract ladder match in WWE. Different goal entirely, right?
Exactly. Though the sources do clarify he did have a similar contract ladder match back in NXT. So the idea of climbing for a contract isn't completely new to him. He has some relevant experience with the match type.
And his strengths seem perfect for this kind of environment. The sources call him the street fighting champion of the islands. Describe him as incredibly durable, resourceful, and finds a way to win, especially when, everything available to you is potentially a weapon.
Yeah, that sounds tailor-made for a no-DQ ladder match, doesn't it? Durable, resourceful, uses weapons. He qualified by beating Jimmy Uso, former Bloodline member, and Penta's brother, Rey Fenix.
Oh.
The core identity the sources give him for this match, simple. All about power.
Okay, and finally, we have the man they name this entire city after, LA Knight, from Los Angeles, of course, the mega star.
Yeah, and the commentary seems really high on him tonight, according to the sources. They argue he's actually talking a lot of sense here, which they contrast with calling his past stuff nonsense.
So they're really buying into him this time. They apparently believe it will make a lot of sense to a lot of people around planet Earth if LA Knight finally grabs the briefcase. Sounds like they think it's his time.
And they talk about the huge impact a win would have. It would send his career in planet Earth into overdrive. There's definitely this feeling of momentum, maybe even destiny, around LA Knight in these sources.
And adding to that feeling, the sources point out this is his 3rd straight year LA Knight's been in Money in the Bank ladder match. They literally ask if maybe this year is the charm for him. Persistence.
It really highlights his drive for this specific prize.
Yeah.
He keeps getting back into this match, wants it bad,
The sources also had that quick mention of Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey presenting the match, the official shot of WWE bad guys. Just a little detail from the presentation grounds it in the event itself.
Right, part of the overall broadcast context.
So, okay, that's our 6 competitors, and they're not just random names thrown together. Each one, based on these sources, brings a totally unique story.
Now, this specific match, the sources were clear that action didn't just, start randomly.
No, not at all.
There was real heat, immediate animosity right from the bell. And you saw it instantly. Sources say bell rings, no feeling out, nothing.
But what?
Andrade, Knight, Penta boom. Straight for Rollins, surrounded him, attacked him.
Total payback for SmackDown. They wanted revenge right away.
And Sol Sikoa joined in on that too.
He did, yeah. Helped toss Rollins out early on. But speaking of Solo, the commentary in your sources picked up on something interesting.
About him in this match.
Yeah, his whole demeanor, it felt different, apparently, compared to, his time just being the enforcer in the bloodline.
Oh, right, this shift you mentioned.
Exactly. For so long, he was the silent, stoic, just, muscle for Roman.
Mm-hmm.
Protect the chief, destroy people.
Yeah, very focused role.
But in this match, commentary said he was way more animated, showing emotion, even moments of humor.
Humor from Solo. That is different.
It really is. The sources specifically pointed out he was doing poses, seemed to be kind of enjoying the chaos, mocking guys. One commentator apparently said this change, this evolution, showing more personality, having fun, it seemed to be working for him. Added a new layer.
So he's maybe moving beyond just being the heavy, starting to show more character in there.
Seems like a deliberate effort, yeah. And based on the commentary reaction in the sources, it landed pretty well. He wasn't just robotic.
That's interesting. Okay, let's shift gears to, well, based on how much time the sources spent on it, probably the weirdest running story of the whole match.
I think I know where you're going. El Grande Americano.
The conspiracy. The commentary team, they were obsessed with this idea he might secretly be Chad Gable.
Obsessed is the word. It wasn't just a throwaway line. They spent ages debating it, presenting their quote-unquote evidence.
And the evidence. Oh, boy. What were the big points they kept hitting from the sources?
Okay, so first off, this started before Money in the Bank. Apparently, in a previous match, Americano wore boots.
Yeah.
With CG on them.
El Grande Americano was wearing boots that said CG. CG Chad Gable.
Right. Or maybe Corey Graves. Just saying.
Right. What exactly is being just said here?
Commentary jumped all over it. Then Gable apparently tweeted some explanation like, oh, the airline lost his boots, I just leased him mine.
The classic lost luggage defense. Sure, Yan. Didn't work, I take it.
Okay, leasing boots. Already a bit strange. But wait, it gets weirder. The sources then flagged that earlier that same day at another event, Worlds Collide, Chad Gable was there competing with his right elbow and arm all taped up. Heavily taped.
Okay, injured elbow. Happens.
But then, later that night, Money in the Bank match, El Grande Americano comes out.
Don't tell me.
With his right elbow and arm, heavily taped.
The same arm. The same day. Okay, yeah, I see why commentary went nuts with that one.
They absolutely ran with it. And the commentary apparently went back and forth on this. One person was trying to shoot it down, calling it a conspiracy theory, suggesting maybe sympathy pains or just, guy hurt his elbow. Yeah, people have hurt elbows. Just a coincidence.
But the other commentator wasn't having it. Sounded really suspicious. Pushing back like, what is this? Achilles. The first time that thing tore. Clearly, finding it hard to swallow as pure chance. Ended up saying something like, you've proven nothing tonight. It's a coincidence, I guess. But, it is pretty specific, gotta admit. What else? They didn't stop there, did they?
Oh, no. Michael Cole, according to the sources, threw in the Wikipedia angle.
Wikipedia? Seriously?
Apparently, if you searched El Grande Americano on Wikipedia, it just redirected straight to Chad Gable's page.
The font of all unquestionable knowledge.
Exactly. And the other commentators immediately started mocking Wikipedia's reliability. Like, oh yeah, never any errors there. Total sarcasm.
Okay.
Maybe Jesse Ventura can get to the bottom of this.
But wait, there was more research, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Something anatomical.
Yes, the nipple comparison.
They really went there.
Wade Barrett apparently claimed he'd done deep research to tell them apart. His method, studying and comparing men's nipples.
You're kidding.
Nope. Said he compared the size differences between Gables and Americanos when they wrestle shirtless as a definitive ID method.
Wow. And they talked about this on air. Repeatedly.
Repeatedly, according to the sources. Clearly for laughs, it became this bizarre running gag, and then the match itself seemed to play into it.
Oh.
Americano at one point puts on an ankle lock up on top of a ladder.
A gable lock.
Whoa.
Or angle lock, yeah.
Yeah.
His signature hold.
Bingo. Commentary jumps right on it. Classic Chad Gable ankle lock. The move itself just fed the theory.
It became this whole self-fulfilling prophecy on commentary.
Totally. It got so involved, the sources say commentary even started joking that the only possible swerve left was for them to actually be two different people, just to justify how far they'd taken the whole thing.
That would be the ultimate punchline. But there was another angle too, right? Why other luchadors might hate Americano. Besides the identity thing.
Yeah, the sources mentioned commentary brought up a more business reason. Professional jealousy.
Over what?
Merchandise. Specifically masks. The quote was something like, nobody's buying Penta's masks anymore. They're buying El Grande Americanos.
The economics of wrestling. Hits them where it hurts the wallet.
Exactly. Frames it as a business rivalry, adds another layer. And performance-wise, identity aside, Americano was apparently doing well.
Yeah, sources said he was on quite a roll since coming to Raw as this character. Maybe undefeated.
Possibly undefeated, yeah. And also called the most entertaining heel in the match.
So Mystery Man, maybe undefeated, maybe Chad Gable, definitely selling masks and entertaining the crowd as a villain. Quite the package.
Definitely made him stand out, even with the nipple talk.
Okay, let's put the identity crisis aside for a second. Talk action. Ladder match. Sources said it was fast. Mile a minute.
Relentless pace, yeah. But not just random chaos. They said it built well to the big spots.
And the big spots sounded brutal. The sources mentioned guys were only out if they were, quote, literally murdered.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Great description of the intensity. You weren't just rolling out for a breather. And those ladder spots, oof.
Tell me about them. Andrade's sunset flip bomb.
Yeah, on Americano, off a ladder. Described as a hellacious bump, brutal landing, just nasty.
Yikes. And Penta. He had a couple of big ones.
He did. Superplexed Seth Rollins onto another ladder below them.
And the sources said that ladder snapped.
Snapped clean in half, raised immediate concern for Rollins' spine, taking a fall like that directly onto metal.
Man, amidst the carnage, Andrade had a smart moment. With Penta.
Yeah, the mind game. They were tag partners recently, right? Both reached the top of the ladder together.
Okay.
Andrade gestures like, go ahead, man, you can have it. Tells Penta to grab the case.
Oh, come on.
Right. Penta reaches, and Andrade just punches him right in the gut. Commentary apparently called Penta naive, like he'd never seen a pro wrestling match before.
Never trust anyone in Money in the Bank. Rule number 1.
Basic stuff. And speaking of setups, that ladder bridge.
Between the ring and the barricade, yeah.
Commentary pointed it out when it was built. You see that. You know someone's crashing through it later. It's just waiting to happen.
Foreshadowing with furniture. Classic. And Penta wasn't done. Mexican Destroyer.
Onto the ladder bridge they'd set up earlier. Commentary apparently lost it. Holy hell. Potential neck snapper.
Did the ladder give way on that one, too?
Sources said it buckled hard on impact, described as disgusting, but also spectacular. That perfect wrestling blend of horrifying and awesome.
Disgusting and spectacular sums up a lot of ladder matches. And speaking of ladders, there was a special one later on.
Oh, yes, the Fireball ladder.
Sponsored content.
Big time. Came out around the 20-minute mark. Described as huge, maybe the best ladder ever seen, just massive.
And clearly branded for Fireball whiskey.
Oh, yeah. Commentary explained it right away. El Grande Americano pulled it out from under the ring.
Of course he did.
With commentary joking the Creed brothers must have hidden it there for him, / Gable.
Nice touch.
And he immediately used it as a weapon, right? Spinning it around like the Sandman.
The Sandman spot. Wow. Hitting everyone.
Pretty much. Commentary noted the blatant product placement, but actually praised Pat McAfee for, like, selling it well, making it part of the action.
So it wasn't just sitting there. It became a factor.
Definitely. Penta and Rollins fought on it later, too. It was a major prop in the match's second half. Interesting integration, the sources noted. The material points to El Grande Americano, and it looks like he's adding something, a steel plate, right into his mask.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, like right away, is how the commentators react. As the camera seems to catch him doing this, you hear Wade Barrett basically pushing a totally different narrative. He's saying it's an antihistamine, for swelling.
Oh, wow. So right off the bat, you've got this clash between what you're maybe seeing and what one commentator is saying.
Exactly. It creates this immediate sort of tension.
And while that whole debate is happening inside the ring, Penta, He's in perfect spot, right?
Prime position. Yeah, he's high up on the main ladder. Looks like he's literally inches away from grabbing that briefcase, the objective.
But things don't stay calm for long. LA Knight suddenly crashes the scene. Not by climbing, though. He does something different.
Totally different. He essentially weaponizes El Grande, catapults him, sends him flying into another ladder that's just propped up outside the ring post.
Okay, now here's where, honestly, it gets kind of wild according to this. El Grande's recovery. It's described as almost like unbelievable. He doesn't just stay down.
Not at all. He's back on his feet with this cat-like speed, and he immediately starts scaling that ladder he was thrown near, the outside one.
And then he uses another ladder. This is nuts.
It's incredible. There's a second ladder inside the ring, kind of leaning on the ropes. He uses almost like a springboard, or maybe riding it like a catapult, to launch himself across the gap onto the main ladder where Penta still is.
That is some serious improvisation. Very split second.
Extremely innovative. And it works. He gets right up there.
Which leads directly to the impact point. El Grande reaches Penta up there, delivers a headbutt. It was with a loaded mask, the one with the plate.
And that's when Michael Cole, another commentator, just goes right through the earlier story. His reaction is instant. He's yelling something like, he used the damn steel plate in his mask.
So confirmation. It confirms what the camera hinted at earlier and just blows up that whole antihistamine explanation from Barrett. For you watching, it's like, okay, that's what really happened.
Right. The visual gets backed up loud and clear. But this whole crazy sequence, it isn't even over yet.
No.
What happens next?
Just as El Grande lands that headbutt, boom, LA Knight appears. Again, right behind El Grande on the same ladder. And he hits a suplex.
Bastard.
A suplex from way up there off the ladder. Just a huge high-impact end to that whole scramble up the ladder.
Wow. And the crowd reaction, the source mentions it specifically. Oh, yeah. Raw. Immediate. A loud chant just breaks out. Holy shit.
You can just picture it.
Holy shit. Holy shit. Holy shit. Wow. Okay. That definitely, yeah, that grabs you. Okay. So we're getting into the later stages. This is where the big narrative stuff started happening, right? Interference. Family drama.
Huge turning points. It started with Rollins. He's down by the announce table looking rough, waving for help.
Signaling the cavalry.
And they arrived. His insurance policies, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, come charging out.
Two absolute monsters.
And they just started wrecking shop, attacking everyone else, clearing the ring for Rollins. Breaker was noted for his chaos, Reed for his power.
The ultimate deck stackers, one source calling them.
Yeah, and Paul Heyman, aligned with Rollins, apparently just cackling like a weasel watching it all unfold.
Their impact was devastating, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Sources detailed Breaker spearing Americano and LA Knight on the floor. Said Americano looked broken in half after the spear.
Ouch.
And Reed hit his tsunami splash on Andrade. Basically neutralized 3 major threats for Rollins.
So Rollins' backup plan worked perfectly.
But
Solo Sikoa had backup too, or potential backup.
That's when things got really interesting. Jacob Fatu and JC Mateo came out.
Fatu, big reaction.
Huge. It led to this big stare down. Breaker and Reed, the power crew of Raw, for Rollins versus Fatu, and Mateo, the power crew of SmackDown, seemingly there for Solo.
And that brawl had big spots too.
Massive ones. Breaker speared Mateo straight through the ringside barricade, took him out completely.
Wow.
And Fatu hit that insane pop-up Samoan drop on Bronson Reed, described as impressive, quite the visual. Then he took Reed out with a suicide dive.
So the interference sort of canceled itself out, leaving Fatu and Solo.
Yeah.
And this was the moment.
The moment. Everyone was watching. Initially, it looked like Fatu was helping Solo. Sources said he helped Solo back in the ring, set up the ladder for him.
Crowd was behind Fatu here, right?
Yeah.
The sources mentioned his face turn.
Yeah. Big-time support for Jacob Fatu. Cena's his official babyface turn, something fans apparently wanted, made sense storyline-wise, looked like family loyalty was winning out.
Solo starts climbing, thinking Fatu cleared the path.
Looks like victory is his, confidence written all over him. Then Fatu reaches up, grabs his ankle.
Yeah, drams, chills.
Absolute betrayal. Solo looks down, confused. Fatu looks up and yells, "I hate you."
Whoa. Direct callback.
To Solo calling Fatu all gas, no brains on SmackDown the night before. That one line, that dismissal, was apparently the trigger.
Incredible payoff. And Fatu didn't just stop him.
Oh, no. He made a statement, pulled Solo down, super kick, moonsault, then...
Ladder bridge.
Remember the ladder bridge? Fatu hits the spinning Solo, drives his own cousin through it.
Oh, my God. Commentary reaction.
Called it a massive moment, a statement. Said Fatu destroyed Solo, just absolutely leveled him.
Then just walked away.
Just exited.
Mhm.
Having, as one source put it, potentially killed off the bloodline for now, maybe ended that whole chapter right there.
Wow. So a massive storyline moment happens right in the middle of Money in the Bank. Unbelievable.
Completely shifted the landscape.
Okay, so with Solo obliterated by Fatu, the path looked pretty clear for Rollins, didn't it?
Suddenly, yeah. Fatu's gone, Breaker and Reed took out others. Rollins grabs another fireball ladder, starts climbing. Heyman looks calm at ringside. Victory seemed inevitable.
Looked like his whole plan, plus the unexpected Fatu implosion, was working out. But LA Knight, he wasn't done.
Still had fight left. Sources called him the lone person to still have life in his meter. Incredible resilience.
Takes a final push.
Comes back in, pulls Rollins off the ladder, hits a lariat, starts climbing himself. Third year in a row for him in this match. Maybe this was finally it.
But Rollins, he recovered.
Just quick enough. Pulled Knight down, slammed his head into the ladder, then hit the stomp.
And that was it for Knight.
Yeah, sources said Knight was out cold. Rollins finally alone. Clear path.
Climbs unchallenged.
Climbs up, retrieves the briefcase. Seth Rollins wins Money in the Bank.
Match time. Sources had slightly different numbers.
Yeah, one said 33 minutes, 35 seconds. Another said 33 minutes, 50 seconds. Over half an hour of that chaos.
And Rollins celebrates with his crew.
Yep, pyro goes off. Joined by Breaker and Reed, celebrating the win they helped secure.
Looking back at the match itself, quality-wise, sources had some mixed notes despite the big moments.
A little bit. While the big spots and the Fatu turn landed huge, some described it as not the smoothest. Mentioned rough moments in the execution.
Like what specifically?
An awkward ladder bridge spot with Andrade and Penta apparently needed adjusting on the fly.
Ah, okay. Little hiccups.
And another sequence where Penta apparently had to wait quite a while on a ladder while Americano did the whole steel plate and the mask thing, and then Knight's catapult of Americano towards Penta was described as awkward.
So some clunky bits in the choreography.
Seems like it, but overall, sources agreed the sold-out LA crowd was hot for it, loved the big moments, the energy carried it through those rough patches.
Okay, let's take a look at what Mr. Meltzer in the bank had to say. And Meltzer gave it a pretty significant rating.
Yeah, that's the first big thing from the notes. 4.5 stars. I mean, that immediately tells you he saw something special.
For sure. 4.5 is, well, it's a big deal.
But what really jumps out to me looking at these notes is the situation with one of the guys in the match.
Oh, you mean Chad Gable?
Oh.
Or, well, El Grande Americano in this match?
Right. Explain that, because it's kind of wild.
Okay, so Meltzer specifically pointed out that Gable had already wrestled earlier that same day.
On the AAA show against El Hijo del Vikingo. And Meltzer apparently called that match a near match of the year candidate.
Wait. So he has a potential match of the year, like a top-tier singles match in the afternoon, probably super demanding. And then he turns around and gets into a multi-person Money in the Bank ladder match that same evening.
Exactly. As El Grande Americano, the endurance is just, it's pretty incredible.
Seriously. That's next level physical output for one day.
It really is. And Meltzer also noted another detail about the El Grande Americano character in the MITB match.
What was that?
He was introduced again from the Gulf of America, and Meltzer sort of assumed this meant that maybe the complaints from fans in Mexico about the character had, subsided.
Okay. So an assumption based on the presentation. Interesting. It suggests maybe they're listening to that feedback, perhaps.
Seems like that's what Meltzer inferred, yeah.
Okay, so we've got this amazing endurance story and this character detail. What about the crowd during the match itself? Did Meltzer pick up on specific reactions?
Oh, yeah. The notes mention a few different chants. At one point, people were chanting for tables.
Tables. In a ladder match. That's a bit specific, isn't it? Usually more for Extreme Rules or something.
Yeah, a little unusual, but that's what the crowd wanted, apparently.
Okay. Any other chants that stood out in the notes?
Yes, this one's interesting. Meltzer reported fans chanting OTC directly at Seth Rollins when he was, in control.
Right, OTC.
This was a reference to Roman Reigns.
Okay, so just to clarify for you listening, that OTC chant. OTC stands for Original Tribal Chief.
Okay. And the chanting didn't end there.
Oh.
Later on, when some interference started happening, the crowd started chanting for CM Punk.
Oh, okay. Interference. So the notes mentioned that was a factor.
They did. Meltzer specifically wrote that Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed just freely interfere.
Freely? Like no one stopped them?
And they were interfering on behalf of Seth Rollins, attacking, everyone else in the match.
So basically, two guys helping Rollins, taking out his opponents.
Yeah.
And the crowd reacted by chanting for Punk to come out, maybe even the odds.
Yeah, that seems to be the implication. They wanted Punk to fight them off.
Okay, so lots of outside help for Rollins, crowd calling for a specific person to counteract it, and nothing.
Right. And beyond that, the notes just mention, typical ladder match stuff. Lots of big moves, lots of climbing, high action.
Okay, so when you sort of step back and look at everything Meltzer highlighted for this 4.5-star match.
Yeah.
It's not just the moves, is it?
Not at all.
It's this incredible double-duty performance. It's these really specific crowd chants wanting tables, the whole OTC thing, calling for Punk, and this significant unchecked interference. It paints a much richer picture. Okay, so let's sum it up. Rollins wins, predictably maybe, but the journey was wild.
Very convoluted path to victory.
Jacob Fatu turns on Solo in spectacular, brutal fashion. Huge storyline implications there.
Massive fallout coming from that for sure.
The El Grande Americano Gable thing was, well, it was a thing. A very weird, detailed thing on commentary.
Kept him busy anyway.
And LA Knight loses again. Third time. Leaves you wondering where he goes now.
Definitely. The sources really focused on that. What's next for Knight, especially being on SmackDown. Felt like he needed this win more than anyone.
Tough spot for him. Okay, so the biggest immediate consequence, according to your sources, the cash-in.
Huge speculation. Several sources strongly predict Rollins tries to cash in almost immediately.
How immediate?
Like the very next night, Monday, June 9th, on Raw.
Wow, less than 24 hours later. Why the certainty?
It lines up with Raw's main event. Rollins is on Raw.
Yeah.
And the World Heavyweight Championship is on the line. Jey Uso versus Gunther.
So Rollins targets the winner of that match. Makes sense. But why the prediction that it happens specifically then, and what's the twist?
One theory laid out was the only reason big names like CM Punk or Roman Reigns didn't interfere to stop Rollins winning MITB was so he could win it, making him the perfect target for the cash-in.
So they let him win the case just so they could screw him when he tries to use it.
That's the theory.
Setting up huge feuds for Rollins down the line with Punk or Reigns or whoever costs him.
Exactly. The briefcase becomes less about Rollins' guaranteed shot and more about a plot device to create his next big conflict. It's a fascinating strategic angle from the sources.
Using the cash in itself as the catalyst for the next story. Clever.
Frames the predictable win in a much less predictable long-term narrative.
Okay, and looking beyond just tomorrow night, sources mentioned other upcoming stuff. King and Queen of the Ring.
Yeah, qualifying matches start on that same Raw, June 9th. Winners get title shots at SummerSlam in August. Big opportunity there.
And Nikki Bella returns on Raw, too.
Scheduled return, yeah. Sources expect that ties into the build for the All-Women's Evolution event.
Which is happening when again?
2 weeks after Night of Champions, apparently.
Yeah.
So her return lines up to start promoting Evolution, where she was a headliner last time.
And looking way ahead, WrestleMania 42.
Officially announced, Las Vegas, Allegiant Stadium. Saturday, April 18th and Sunday, April 19th, 2026.
Vegas it is. Contradicts earlier rumors, right?
Yeah, sources noted the New Orleans rumors seemed dead. Vegas conflicts presumably resolved. Locked in now.
Good to know. And finally, the usual plugs were mentioned in the sources, too.
Yep, Fanatics games at Fanatics Fest NYC, FIFA World Cup packages, Wheatley American Vodka, honoring the military, Prime Hydration, standard integrated stuff during the broadcast.
Gotcha. Today, we are really zeroing in, focusing all our attention on just one huge event, the one that closed out Money in the Bank 2025.
That main event tag match.
Exactly. The tag team main event, a pretty wild clash featuring, John Cena teaming up with Logan Paul against Cody Rhodes and the World Heavyweight Champion Jey Uso.
Yeah, quite the lineup.
And the whole setup for this, based on that video package they showed, the stakes felt incredibly high. It painted Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso as, fighting for the fans, for the WWE Universe to save wrestling's future or something.
Yeah, that was the framing.
And on the other side, John Cena and Logan Paul, their goal, supposedly, was to just change everything, shake up the whole landscape.
Disruptors.
Right. And Cena, wow. He wasn't just the legend, the last real champion. They framed him, especially after beating Cody for title number 17 at WrestleMania 41, as someone who now wants to, and this is a quote, ruin wrestling for everyone.
That's a heck of a turn.
It really is. And adding to that, this was Cody's first match back since that massive loss to Cena his return.
So, yeah, the history was thick even before they touched. It wasn't just a tag match. It felt like a battle for the soul of the place, built right off that WrestleMania result.
Okay, so let's dig into how we even got here. The pre-match stuff, the build-up, Saturday night's main event.
Yeah, that's right, on NBC. Sources detailed Cena confronting Jey Uso backstage. Apparently it was pretty cryptic, lots of tension. You knew something was coming.
That came pretty quick.
Oh, yeah. Later that same night, Cena jumps right into Jey's match against Logan Paul, attacks Jey, beats him down until, and this is the big shocker everyone pointed to, Cody Rhodes runs out, makes his return.
That was the moment, wasn't it? The save.
Absolutely. That instantly set the team, set the feud. Sources say that led to more stuff in the following weeks. You know, trash talk, backstage attacks, really established Cody and Jey pushing back against this weird Cena-Paul alliance. The lines were drawn.
And the motivations, based on what the sources and commentary were pushing. Pretty interesting layers here. Cena's stated goal, the one they hammered home, was literally ruin wrestling forever.
I mean, that's bold.
It's not the Cena we knew, right?
Yeah.
This sounds like someone bitter wanting to tear down what he built.
Mm-hmm.
And Logan Paul, well, the story presented him as just going along with it. Maybe for the attention, maybe he actually agrees, who knows. But he's on Team Room and Wrestling.
It's a wild heel turn for Cena, yeah, making him this destructive force after hitting that huge milestone. Then you got Cody, first match back since losing the big one to Cena. And one source mentioned this tag match was something Cody himself apparently asked for.
Oh, really? He requested this match?
That's the report, yeah. Which suggests, you know, he didn't just want any match back. He wanted to get right back in there, maybe face Cena indirectly, start that climb back immediately. Says a lot about the character.
And Jey Uso, the world champ. Sources noted his position, but also, like, how tough things have been for him. Taking beatings, big matches, and he's got Gunther literally the next night on Raw.
Yeah, commentary really leaned into that during his entrance, talking about him being stretched thin. They even said, yeah, Gunther might have a point. You know, questioning if a champ should be taking these risks in a non-title tag match right before a huge defense, added some vulnerability there.
Speaking of entrances, they definitely told a story. Cody first, big pyro, theme music, and that graphic they put up showed his undisputed title reign, 378 days, and made sure to mention he lost it to John Cena at WrestleMania 41.
Yeah, no escaping that. Just a constant visual reminder of the stakes for him personally, tying him directly to Cena right from the start.
Then Jey comes out, through the crowd, doing the whole yeet thing with everyone, soaking it up, asking for more noise in the ring.
And bam. Logan Paul's music cuts him right off. Yep. Classic heel move, right? Interrupting that fan connection. And like you said, commentary during Jey's entrance kept hitting that stretched thin angle. Is he focused enough on the title?
Then Logan Paul. Big entrance, carrying that drone, basically did his WrestleMania entrance again, flew the drone all around the arena, caught it on the top rope, looked pretty cool, gotta admit.
It did, acknowledging Paul might get heat, but maybe this flashy entrance would impress this crowd.
And the drone wasn't just for show.
Nope, definitely came back later.
And finally, John Cena. His graphic. Just a laundry list of dominance. 17-time world champ, U.S. champ, tag champ, Money in the Bank, Royal Rumbles.
Total contrast to Cody's graphic, right? All about Cena's accomplishments, with that number 17 front and center, rubbing it in, basically. And commentary doubled down on the heel turn, saying Cena's past the point of giving fans what they want. He's doing his own thing now.
So yeah, all that context. Then the bell rings. Match starts. Looked like Paul was going to start with Cody, but nope, tag Cena immediately. Then Cena tags right back out. Kind of weird.
Yeah, a little bit of feeling out. One analyst even noted they weren't exactly clamoring for Cody versus Cena again right then. Maybe that affected how they started it. Eventually, Cena tagged back in to face Cody.
Early action. Cody took Cena down. Paul did a flip. Cody did that Stardust cartwheel thing, which apparently got some you can't wrestle chants. Aimed at Cena. Weird.
Yeah, strange reaction there. Cody hit a delayed gourd buster on Paul, Jey tagged in, hit a flying axe handle, then Paul decked Jey. And that's when things slowed down, way down, into what one source called 95% of this fucking match.
The heat segment on Jey Uso.
Exactly, and this is where a lot of the criticism really lands. You know, a heat segment is supposed to build sympathy, get the crowd desperate for the tag.
But this one sounds like it went on forever.
According to the sources, yeah. An extended beatdown. Cena and Paul just work Jey over, ground and pound, whipping him into the corners again and again. Stomps, clothesline, shoulder tackles, gut wrench slam, big boot, and that leg drop Paul does.
It's not just any leg drop by Paul.
No.
It's the leg drop called the Hogan Paul. And the defining thing about it, why it has that name is because it's a tribute.
And commentary had that little inside joke, right? Michael Cole saying, yeah, that will get over here, referencing Hulk Hogan getting booed in that same building earlier. Plus, Paul cheating behind the ref's back, Cena slamming Jay's head on the turnbuckle. It was methodical. And the reactions were pretty rough. Dreadful grinded this show to a halt. One source said it felt like a match from, like, the midpoint of a Raw from 2009.
Ouch. That's not a compliment for a modern PLE main event.
Definitely not. They called it classic, long, drawn-out heat with a chinlock, slow, brutal, just really negative on the pacing and execution of this whole section.
Was the criticism just about the length?
Not entirely. One analyst was particularly critical of Jay's selling in that segment, felt he wasn't compelling in that specific role, taking the beating. They even suggested maybe the role should have been flipped, have Cody take the heat, thinking he'd make it more dynamic. Yeah, they even compared it to a house show match, which is basically saying it felt lower effort or less engaging than you'd expect for this spot.
But Jay's known for his comebacks, right? Did he show any fight? Commentary mentioned that 0 to 100 thing he does.
He did try. Commentary noted his resilience. There was a spot where he countered Cena's AA attempt with a sleeper hold.
Okay.
Although one source kind of mocked it, called it the worst-looking rear naked choke you have ever seen, said he'd get his white belt taken away in jiu-jitsu. So even the comeback attempts weren't landing perfectly for some critics.
So this long, criticized segment. How did it finally end? Did Jay just power out?
Not exactly. The opening actually came because Cena and Paul messed up. They started arguing in their corner, apparently about who was leading, who should tag in, got into a little shoving match.
Ah, the classic miscommunication.
Exactly. That little argument, that distraction, that was Jay's chance. He finally made the crawl over and got the hot tag to Cody.
The fresh QB, as one source put it.
That's the one. And Cody came in hot, cleared the ring, clotheslines everywhere, dropped down uppercut. Then, boom, Cody cutter on Cena.
And someone noticed how Cena took that.
Yeah, one analyst pointed out Cena's legs looked like they just stopped working, like they just collapsed, made the move look extra impactful, or maybe just showed the wear and tear on Cena.
Cody kept rolling, right?
Oh, yeah. Tossed Paul over the top, hit that suicide dive onto him on the floor, back in, missile drop kick off the top onto Cena. You could hear the commentary perk up. The energy shifted instantly.
Okay, so we're out of the slow part now. Big move starting.
Definitely. Things picked up fast. Cena countered a crossroads from Cody, thanks to Paul hitting Cody, and Cena hit the AA. But Cody kicked out at 2.
Then the Logan Paul rope spot.
Right. He went for that lariat off the ropes, money clip, snapshot, a buckshot, whatever you want to call it, and he slipped. Pretty noticeable botch.
Yeah. How did that play out? People noticed that stuff.
They did, and interpretations varied. One analyst had this really generous take, suggesting maybe it was cleverly coded, like an intentional callback to CM Punk's slipping on the same move.
Wait, seriously? They thought a slip might be planned as a reference.
Look, that's what one source proposed. Seemed like a stretch, but that was the interpretation. More realistically, most agreed Jey Uso reacted instantly with a super kick right after the slip. One analyst felt Jay saved it, and that the super kick was probably the planned follow-up anyway.
Okay, that makes more sense. So the action kept going after that near miss.
Absolutely. It became a flurry. Cena hit an AA on Jay. Cody hit the crossroads on Cena. Paul tried a springboard splash but kind of landed on Cena by mistake. Jay speared Paul. Cena and Jay trading shots. Boom, boom, boom. Jay blocked another AA, hit another super kick. Haymakers, forearms flying. Paul hit an uppercut on Jay. Just rapid-fire big moments.
And Logan Paul seemed to be shining in this chaos. Sources singled him out.
Yeah, consistently. Even the critics who disliked the match overall kept saying Paul was the star, delivered the coolest shit, and kind of held the match together with his big spots and athleticism.
He definitely seemed to want the spotlight. After hitting that pulverizer move on Cody, he didn't even go for the pin.
Nope. Straight away called for the prime drone.
Ah, the return of the drone.
You got it. Flew right to him on the top rope. He catches it. Then, while he's holding the drone, Cody recovers and hits a massive superplex off the top. And the cool part, the broadcast view switched to the drone's camera for the superplex.
Whoa. Okay, that is cool. A drone's eye view of a superplex.
Yeah, one source called it fucking cool. Most entertaining part of the match. Jay followed up with an Uso splash on Paul, still from the drone view. Really creative use of the gimmick.
So after the drone fun, the tables came out.
They did. Cena recovered, hit AAs on both Jay and Cody. Cody kicked out again. Cena, frustrated, clears off both announce tables.
Both tables. Okay, he means business.
Looked like it. Tried to AA Cody through one, but Cody slipped out. Then Jey Uso, out of nowhere, runs across the other table and spears Cena. Definitely made impact.
But the table was still standing.
And Logan Paul took care of that. Climbed up and hit an insane SI moonsault, that backwards slip dive off the ropes, through the second table, crashing onto Jey Uso.
Wow, that sounds spectacular.
Commentary thought so. Beautiful, spectacular. Analysts called it the spot of the match. Incredible. High praise. Though one source did add a little context, saying while it looked great, it didn't quite feel as historically massive as, say, Shawn Michaels hitting it on Ric Flair back in the day. Perspective, I guess.
Okay, so bodies everywhere after the table spots. How did we get to the finish?
Cena and Cody, both hurting, crawled back in. And Cena, he grabs the WWE title belt, the one he took from Cody, and just cracks Cody over the head with it.
Ooh, using the title as a weapon. Commentary called that out.
Yeah, another despicable act from John Cena. Looked like that was it. Cena used the bell, he's going to win, but then the interruption, the big surprise.
And this reveal, this is where the reported real-world stuff comes crashing in, right?
Absolutely critical context here, according to all the sources. Just as Cena hits Cody, someone in a hoodie hops the barricade, jumps in, tackles Cena, starts throwing punches. Huge tension. Who is it?
And the unmasking?
Oh my God, it's R-Truth.
The reaction must have been huge.
Insane pop. Massive reaction, sources said. And commentary sold the surprise perfectly. Cole yelled, "Wait, I thought they couldn't come to an agreement on a new contract."
Directly linking the moment to all those backstage reports.
Okay, let's unpack this R-Truth situation fully. This context seems key. It's fundamental. Sources explain that leading up to the show, reports were everywhere. WWE wasn't renewing Truth's deal, he was gone or leaving soon. And the reported reason, specifically cited by one source from The Observer, was a financial decision by TKO, the parent company, said his salary was too high for how they were using him.
Too high, even though WWE is making record money. Sources mention that contrast.
Oh, absolutely. They emphasize that. Billions from Netflix, Saudi deals, record profits. But this beloved veteran was reportedly deemed too expensive. And that stark contrast, that's what caused the reported huge social media backlash.
People were not happy.
Not at all. Sources universally describe Truth as beloved, fans, wrestlers, everyone. A great locker room guy, 17 years straight with the company, provided amazing comedy, still in great shape at 53. Just wrestled Cena and selling a bunch of merch like that Ron Cena shirt.
So the news hit hard.
Yeah, nobody was happy, as one source put it. And it wasn't just online. Fans started chanting, "We want Truth." At shows Raw, SmackDown, even at Money in the Bank during the kickoff and panel show, described as sporadic, but definitely noticeable.
And then boom, he shows up in the main event. Commentary calls it a return. He's back.
And that phrasing return got analyzed too. Some felt it was awkward or misleading because the report suggested his contract might not have even been up yet, or he hadn't fully left. Made it confusing for casual fans, maybe. He just wrestled. What's he returning from?
Right, a disconnect between the story they're telling and the reported reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which led analysts to suggest WWE framed it as a return or couldn't come to an agreement to maybe shift blame. From the perception they cut a popular veteran purely for cost reasons during record profits, saying they couldn't agree sounds more mutual, less like a corporate cut. And crucially, the strong consensus among analysts was this wasn't some elaborate work planned all along. This was WWE reacting to the backlash.
Fixing a past mistake, a fuck-up that blew up on them. So the outcry basically forced their hand, and they turned it into this big on-screen moment.
That's the main interpretation from the sources, yeah. Frame the return as, "We listened to the fans, instant PR win." One analyst even linked it to Cena's promo inviting the "We want Truth" chants, suggesting the ending with Truth was likely planned after the backlash got loud, not the original plan. Reactive.
Wow. Fans directly impacting the main event finish, potentially. Any other Truth tidbits?
Just some brief speculation he might use his real name Ron Killings going forward, based on a temporary graphic on the WWE shop site, but nothing concrete.
And that provocative idea about this setting a new template.
Yeah, the cynical take from one analyst: fire them, release them, and just get the crowd to do the work for you. Basically, manufacturing demand by creating scarcity and outrage, then capitalizing on the big return pop. A dark view, but born from this situation.
Yikes. Okay, so Truth attacks Cena after the reveal.
Yeah, tackles him, punches, then hits Cena with the title belt he just used. payback. Then Truth bails, escapes through the crowd, did his part.
Leaving Cena down, Cody recovering.
Exactly. Cody staggers up, still feeling that belt shot, hits the crossroads on Cena. 1, 2, 3. Cody Rhodes pins John Cena.
And that pinfall itself was significant.
Hugely significant. Commentary hammered at home. Cody pinned the WWE champion. Massive win for him, especially after the WrestleMania loss. Match time, by the way, was 23 minutes, 45 seconds, which, as one analyst dryly noted, felt like it. A little dig at the pacing.
Just that. Seems almost, well, slight, doesn't it? Which brings us to the overall match assessment. Pretty divided opinions, huh, for a main event?
Very polarized. On one hand, you had the exciting moments, the big spots, the drone, the tables, the R-Truth surprise. Commentary sold the drama. But the critical analysts, much, much harsher.
What were the main complaints about the match itself?
They were blunt. Fucking awful.
Oh.
Unusually bad for the modern standard. Lowest point of any wrestling I saw today. Very bland, outside of Logan Paul's spots. The consensus from critics was it felt like a Raw main event, not a big PLE closer. Said it dragged the show down, mainly due to that long, slow heat segment and the perceived issues with Jay selling in that part.
So moments of brilliance overshadowed by pacing and execution issues for a lot of it.
That seems to be the main takeaway from the critical sources. But, BUT, amidst all that negativity, Logan Paul consistently got praised. Multiple sources called him the star of that match, even with the criticisms elsewhere. Said he delivered the coolest shit and basically held the match together during the action parts.
Even with the slip.
Even with the slip, yeah. His athleticism, his big moments, they really stood out. He seems effective in these kinds of matches, these spurts of high impact.
Okay. So after the match, Cody and Jay talked to the crowd.
Yeah, Cody grabbed the mic, thanked the fans, acknowledged it was his first match back. Then he hyped Jay's match against Gunther for Raw, asking the crowd who'd win. Jay got the last word with his 4 letters, 1 word, yeet! Sent the crowd home on a high note, seemingly.
Nice way to end it live.
Yeah.
Let's see what Dave Meltzer thought about this match.
Okay, so let's dive in. First thing, maybe the baseline. His overall rating for the match.
He gave it 3.5 stars.
Right. 3.5?
And, you know, for anyone who follows Meltzer's ratings, that's, well, it's solid. It's a good match.
It tells you he thought it was well worked, delivered pretty well, but maybe wasn't like an all-time classic or anything.
Precisely. It sets a benchmark. He saw definite positives in there.
And talking about positives, or maybe just interesting dynamics, he jumped on something specific with John Cena pretty quickly.
Oh, absolutely. The crowd reaction. He highlighted that specific chant. You know, the one, "You can't wrestle, yes, he can."
Yeah.
And what's interesting, and what Meltzer pointed out, is how that chant is almost, it's like meta commentary, isn't it?
How so?
Well, it brings up that old critique of Cena, the one people have said for years, even if it's maybe outdated now.
Mm-hmm.
But then the crowd immediately shuts it down themselves. It shows they're completely in on it,
Yeah.
playing along with Cena's whole history and presence.
So it's not just a simple chant, it's layered. A unique kind of interaction Meltzer found worth noting.
Definitely. Shows that audience connection is key.
Which is huge in wrestling, obviously. But Meltzer also looked at the story inside the ring, particularly with Jey Uso.
Yeah, he did. He observed that a pretty big part of the match was built around Jey Uso just taking a beating, absorbing punishment.
Not just random action, though.
No. Meltzer saw clear storyline intent there. The idea, as he read it, was Jey sacrificing himself, taking the heat for Cody.
Ah, okay.
And it served another purpose, too, weakening Jey, making him seem less than 100% before his big title match against Gunther that was coming up.
Right. So the match choreography is directly feeding into a future storyline. That's the kind of structural stuff Meltzer always looks for.
Exactly. It's how the pieces fit together in the bigger picture.
So we've got the crowd stuff, the character storytelling. But he didn't shy away from the technical side either, did he? Got a bit critical.
He did, yeah. Specifically about the camera work. He noted that the production actually missed some key shots during the action.
Which might sound like nitpicking to some, maybe?
You might think so, but for Meltzer, the camera work is part of the total package. It directly affects how you experience the match at home.
Right. If the camera's pointing the wrong way when something crucial happens.
It doesn't matter how good the wrestlers are being, you missed it. Takes away from the whole thing. So a valid critique from his perspective.
Okay, and there was one specific high spot, a really impactful moment involving Logan Paul that really caught his eye.
Oh, definitely. That moonsault Logan Paul did onto Jey Uso, who was laid out on the announce table.
Yeah.
He described it as impressive as hell.
Yeah.
High praise for the athleticism, the spectacle of it.
There's always a but with Meltzer sometimes, isn't there?
Kinda, yeah. In the same breath, he added that qualifier even though he landed on Uso's knees.
Ah.
And that little phrase, it perfectly sums up his style, acknowledging the wow factor, the risk.
Impressive as hell.
Right. While also pointing out the execution wasn't perfect or maybe even a bit dangerous, the potential flaw.
So it's praise and critique, like, wrapped up together in one observation.
Exactly that. It's analytical. All right, final thoughts. What are the future implications? What did this match set up?
R-Truth is the big immediate one. His attack on Cena screams rematch. Builds off their previous encounter. Now Truth costs Cena the win. Maybe Truth versus Logan Paul too, though one analyst questioned if Paul needs that right now. But yeah, Truth likely got a new deal out of this whole thing, plus a Cena program.
And Cody beating Cena. Points straight to the title chase, right?
Absolutely. Sources agree the finish totally leans you towards Cody's chase of Cena. That's the long-term plan. However, there was skepticism about the quality of that chase. One analyst basically said, based on this match and their WrestleMania match, they weren't excited to see Cody versus Cena again in singles action. Didn't feel the chemistry was there.
So the destination is clear, but the journey might be rocky, or at least not universally anticipated.
That's the critique, yeah. And questions about timing, too. Do fans want Cody to win the title back soon? Like SummerSlam. Or maybe WWE drags it out longer if they sense the appetite for this specific rematch isn't sky high yet. So Cody's chase is on, but maybe a little bit longer than people think.
Interesting. And what about Jey Uso? He won, but took a beating.
Yeah, sources say he came out worse for wear. Especially with Gunther waiting on Raw the next night, it reinforces that whole narrative. Is he stretching himself thin, taking too much punishment in these non-title tags while holding the world title, sets up vulnerability for his defense?
Man, this one match really did a lot of work then. Setting up multiple stories, bringing in real-world drama.
It really was a vehicle. Had the big spots, the Cena heel stuff, and obviously that R-Truth moment tied to all the backstage reports.
Today, we are plunging headfirst into the wild world of professional wrestling, specifically the aftermath of WWE's Money in the Bank.
We're talking fan power, shifting dynamics backstage, and those really fascinating stories behind the curtain you don't always hear.
But, okay, so Money in the Bank. The event itself, it seems like a pretty big success for WWE, based on the reports I've seen. What really stood out?
Well, the numbers, right. They definitely tell a story. You had the Intuit Dome packed 17,374 fans. That shattered their previous gate record for that arena, which wasn't even that long ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and reports, including Dave Meltzer's analysis, suggest the show probably cleared over $5 million. That's a huge success.
Definitely significant.
And what's interesting, like Meltzer pointed out, is Money in the Bank is already a big deal for them, maybe fourth or fifth biggest show of the year. But this success, it really highlights how the WWE brand is the main draw now. It's almost like it doesn't matter quite as much who's on the card. The brand pulls them in.
That's a really key point. The brand itself as the star.
Yeah.
And the interest went way beyond the building, too, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Google searches for WWE stuff that day up almost 50% compared to Backlash and way up compared to AEW's Double or Nothing Day, too. Money in the Bank itself was like over half of those searches.
Huge numbers.
And globally, Dave Meltzer also reported Netflix viewership outside the U.S. likely topped 2 million. So the reach is massive. In terms of the actual wrestling, folks seem generally happy with the briefcase winners. The Becky Lynch versus Lyra Valkyria match got a lot of praise. Definitely called worth watching.
Okay.
But, some sources did say, look, maybe Money in the Bank didn't quite hit the same level as AEW's Double or Nothing quality-wise, or maybe even the upcoming All In. Apparently, that Dominik and Octagón Jr. match was seen by many as kind of a throwaway.
Right. Not every match can be a classic. And you always get some celebrity presence at these big LA shows.
Yeah, Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker were there. Got booed, apparently, which TMZ definitely picked up on. And Danielle Fishel, Topanga from Boy Meets World, she was there too.
Okay. But let's pivot, because there was one story that it dominated everything, didn't it? The R-Truth situation. Ron Killings. It's just an incredible, kind of unbelievable story. Can you unpack how that all started?
Yeah, it really is something. It kicked off with these really shocking reports that he'd been released by WWE, and it caught everyone off guard, fans, other wrestlers, everyone.
And it wasn't a storyline.
No, absolutely not. Sources from wrestling news sites were very clear the initial release was real. It was not a work. Apparently, there were really emotional goodbyes backstage. The whole vibe was described as shock and disappointment. One source even said there were a lot of tears. Killings was shocked and kind of disgusted.
Oh, wow.
And the way it happened was reportedly pretty cold and impersonal. Done by a lower-level employee, not upper management, which seemed odd.
That's rough. But then the fan reaction,
Yeah.
that was something else.
It was immediate and just overwhelming. Hashtags like #WeWantTruth just exploded online.
Yeah.
And R-Truth himself, Ron Killings, he posted on social media. That post got something like 22 million views. Astonishing.
22 million. Just shows the power there. So WWE had to react.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't a simple, oops, let's rehire him. Apparently, the first attempts to reach out didn't really go anywhere. It wasn't until WWE President Nick Khan himself got involved, which sources say is pretty rare for him in talent negotiations.
Okay, so that signals how serious they took it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It suggests they saw this as a major issue, potentially for morale, for the locker room, and the deal only came together really late, within the last 72 hours before Money in the Bank. Super down to the wire.
Crazy timing. So then, fast forward to the press conference after the show, and Triple H is kind of grinning, saying it was all part of the show, man, suggesting it was planned all along.
Right. And that's where it gets really messy, that whole work versus shoot debate. Because R-Truth himself went straight to social media and said, flat out, it was not a work.
Directly contradicting his boss, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And his son, Christopher, even replied to the video of Triple H saying, stop the cap, which, is slang for stop lying. Multiple wrestlers also backed up that it wasn't planned. One veteran was quoted saying, Ronnie wouldn't lie to us. Another apparently said something like, Hunter hates it when the fans hijack the story.
That really raises a big question, doesn't it? What happens when the fans, the collective voice, just completely rejects the company's official story?
Exactly. It's more than just one guy getting his job back. It's about that power dynamic. Can the fans actually force a change, force the company off its planned script? It's fascinating.
It really is. And then, of course, the return itself at Money in the Bank was a huge surprise moment. He attacks John Cena, helps Cody and Jey Uso win, and then days later on Raw, the haircutting segment, R-Truth has set Ron Killings free. Big statement. And WWE, interestingly, already has new Ron Killings merchandise up, a design they apparently had ready for months, even before the release.
Yeah, the timing on the merch is interesting. If you connect this whole saga to, talent security in WWE, Dave Meltzer talked about this on Wrestling Observer Radio. He reported some executives are worried this whole thing might make fans more vocal, thinking they can influence decisions just by making noise.
Like setting a precedent.
Kinda. It really drives home that idea. If you think you're safe, you are not in WWE, unless you're maybe one of the absolute top names. You look at another recent release, Valhalla, real name Sarah Logan. Her contract wasn't renewed. No huge outcry, no return. This R-Truth situation was truly unique, a rare case where fan and locker room support seemingly forced the company's hand.
Such a whirlwind. Okay, moving beyond R-Truth, because Money in the Bank had other big moments and some fallout too. Logan Paul, for instance.
Ah, yes, Logan Paul. Did that insane springboard moonsault through the table. Looked amazing, but he apparently got a nasty hematoma on his shin for his trouble.
Ouch. And didn't he say something about Cena telling him not to do it?
He did. On his podcast, Impulsive, he said John Cena literally told him beforehand, you can't make that jump. And what's kind of funny, or maybe telling, is Paul said when he was down, injured after the move, he had no idea R-Truth had returned and interfered. He was just watching like a fan rooting for Cena before realizing, oh wait, that guy just cost me the match.
A fan in the moment. Okay, and speaking of returns and making a splash, Bayley came back.
That's right. Big return on Monday Night Raw. Attacked Becky Lynch, got some payback. Lyra Valkyria got involved too, stopped Becky from getting away. And then there's the unexpected breakout star, Mr. Iguana.
Mr. Iguana, right,
Yeah.
from AAA Lucha Libre.
Yeah, apparently he was a massive hit. With fans and with WWE management too,
Yeah.
at Worlds Collide and then again at Money in the Bank. He was even trending on X. Word is WWE is really buzzing internally about the merchandising potential, so expect to see a lot more of him.
Interesting. Shows how quickly someone can catch on. Now let's shift to championships. Big change on Raw.
Yep, the World Heavyweight Championship. Gunther beat Jey Uso. Strong match. Went 22 minutes, 8 seconds. Gunther won with the sleeper hold. Jey passed out.
So what's the thinking there? Jey was super popular.
Well, according to Dave Meltzer, Jey's title reign might have been seen internally as more of a token run.
Which is interesting, right? Because despite his popularity, despite selling more merch than Gunther, maybe the top brass didn't see him as the guy long term. Fan reaction isn't always everything, it seems.
That disconnect between fan support and booking, always fascinating.
Meltzer also suggested this win could set Gunther up for a face turn down the line, becoming a good guy.
Yeah.
And maybe even sets the stage for Seth Rollins to try and cash in on Gunther later, which would definitely get Rollins a ton of heat from the fans.
Lots of possibilities. And Jey Uso, even after the loss, had a pretty memorable moment post-show.
He did, gave this really heartfelt speech to the crowd in Phoenix, brought his youngest son Jace into the ring, even gave some life advice to the kids. Pick up after yourselves, say your prayers, and wash your butts. Classic. Okay, looking ahead then. What's coming up on the WWE calendar?
All right, next big one is Night of Champions, June 28th, over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Main event announced. John Cena versus CM Punk for the WWE title.
Punk in Saudi Arabia. That's definitely going to get people talking.
Oh, yeah. Meltzer pointed out the potential hypocrisy given Punk's very strong past statements against performing there, though Meltzer also kind of acknowledged that, well, sports washing has done its job to normalize all this. It's a complex issue.
For sure. What else at Night of Champions?
Finals for the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments. Winners get a title shot at SummerSlam. Meltzer kind of cheekily noted WWE is copying from AEW and the Owen Hart tournament with that format. And we now know Jey Uso is the mystery entrant for King of the Ring. So interesting path for him after losing the title.
Okay, and Evolution 2, the all-women's show.
Yep, that's official. Scheduled for July in Atlanta. Triple H said he's wanted to do another Evolution since the first one. Early buzz is it might center around Jade Cargill since she's from Atlanta. Maybe facing Naomi, who just turned heel and won the Money in the Bank briefcase. Lots of potential there.
Sounds good. And SummerSlam.
Cardi B is hosting SummerSlam. Triple H had a quote about working with her, saying, "You sort of hanging on to the tiger's tail a little bit. Sounds like they know she's unpredictable," which could be fun.
Definitely had some mainstream buzz.
All right, so wrapping up this deep dive into Money in the Bank 2025, what are the big takeaways?
Well, obviously the Money in the Bank contract winners. Naomi from SmackDown, Seth Rollins from Raw. That changes the championship landscapes on both brands immediately.
We saw Becky Lynch get back in the title picture, winning the women's IC belt, though maybe not cleanly, keeping that feud alive. Dominik held onto his title.
And the surprises were huge. That Jacob Fatu turn on Solo Sikoa. That's a massive internal explosion within the bloodline with potentially huge fallout.
And R-Truth's return. Driven by fan support, apparently, and immediately making a massive impact in the main event, costing John Cena in what might be his last ever match at this specific event.
Yeah, the Cena aspect looms large. His final MITB, the heel turn, the retirement plan, it all added so much weight to that main event and its outcome. Seems like the show really delivered on drama and storyline progression.
It definitely sounds like it lived up to being one of the big 5 events. Plenty of action, twists, and moments people will be talking about.
For sure. It set a lot of things in motion.
So as we finish up, here's something for you, the listener, to chew on, building off what we've discussed from the source. With Seth Rollins and Naomi holding those briefcases, who do you think they target? Rollins is a 2-time winner now, maybe leading a new faction. How does that contract play into his plans and alliances?
And Naomi on SmackDown, who does she set her sights on? How does her holding that contract reshape the women's division there? And then think about that main event fallout. What does R-Truth's return really mean? Does his intervention derail John Cena's plan to retire as champion? Does Truth become Cena's final obstacle?
Lots of questions sparked by this one event. Definitely something to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.